One, two. Hold on, guys. We're going to roll this. We're going to roll the intros again. We're going to start over because I did not turn my microphone on. Stand by. Welcome in, everybody, to today's live broadcast. It is Tuesday, the 19th of May, 2020. I'm your host, Carey Holzman, and today I've got a computer build for you. A what? He never does those. Yeah, not only am I going to do another computer build, but it's going to be the same as several other builds you've seen me do recently. And the reason is because I build what customers order in this particular configuration. A lot of customers are asking for this configuration. And I can understand why. It's a great combination of performance, price, storage. It's quiet, it's upgradable, and it can pretty much do whatever you want it to do. For example, today we're going to build a computer and use the onboard graphics built into the CPU, and that's great for general home use and office use. If you wanted to day trade, you could add some more monitors. If you wanted to do gaming, just add a graphics card. As good of a graphics card as you can add is as good of a gaming machine as it's going to be. There's the ability to do photo editing, video editing, in which case you might want to double the RAM, double the storage, and get a real high-end graphics card, and maybe bump the power supply up by 100 watts. Although honestly, a lot of people really go overkill on their power supply predictions. And I find it fascinating that here on the internet, the videos are mostly made by enthusiasts. They're not made by regular, average, ordinary day, everyday folks. And I think it's a real shame. I think it's a shame that people are alienated away from this little clique that's been created. And it is my goal to bridge the technical with the end user and to empower the end user to build their own machine. I can tell you that you cannot buy a machine like this pre-built with these specs for anywhere near this price. So when I tell you it's affordable or I tell you it's cheap, of course that's a subjective term. For some of you, you'll say, yeah, that is cheap, give me 6 of them. And for others, you'll be like, well, that's out of my price league. If you're serious about getting into PCs and you want to just buy one computer and be done with it for several years, spending any less than $1,000 or $900 is just fooling yourself. Or perhaps you have very simple needs. But in this case, this computer is made up of name brand parts, and there's only a handful of parts you need to do this. Right here in front of me, I've got the motherboard, the storage, the RAM, the CPU, the cooler, the power supply, the DVD drive, and the case. That's it. What is that, 7 parts? And it's exceptionally easy to do. I promise you can do it. I get videos from people, viewers like yourself, building their computers and sharing that with us. They're regular folks, they're not techs. We're not doing this overkill nonsense stuff that these really popular tech channels do. One of the issues with the real popular tech channels is they deal with a lot of enthusiast, hobby-like activities, which are very impractical in real-world use and also very expensive. So things like liquid cooling and overclocking and lapping a CPU or delidding a CPU and stuff like that. You really don't see the long-term negative consequences of doing these actions. Furthermore, if you really want an idea to get into the mind of a computer technician that works in the real world, we don't do any of that stuff. Corporations like General Electric or your local power provider, whatever community you live in, they're technicians that support their employees, which enable them to take your phone calls and answer your service questions and provide electricity to your house. Those technicians are not being paid to overclock, put in liquid cooling or RGB lighting. There's no case windows. And they're extraordinarily overworked and underpaid and underappreciated. That is the real true life of being a tech. And these other tech channels, will I applaud them for celebrating tech, kind of gloss over the fact that it's not realistic, or it's not practical. It's fun as a hobby. And if you're a hobbyist with a lot of money and you want to invest in this, liquid cooling adventure, certainly all the power to you. I just don't want people to misunderstand the reality of being a computer technician versus sitting at home and doing stuff yourself. And I feel like there's a huge disparity, there's a huge gap between the hobbyists and the end user. So the hobbyists, they go overboard. They're extremists in many cases with things that they do that are not, again, I want to keep using the word practical, but they find it to be fun and they spend their money on it. Now, if you're of the mindset that $1,000 computer is a lot of money, then certainly watching these videos about, $700 liquid cooling setup, that's just the liquid cooling setup, right? That doesn't include any of the part. That's just the cooling part of it. It is well beyond your price range and certainly nothing that you would reasonably do. It's sort of like putting hubcaps on a lawnmower. You can do it, and if it's important to you, I won't tell you you're wrong. But the rest of us, the vast majority of us, just want to cut our lawn and want a lawnmower that works. Whether or not it's got hubcaps is not important to the majority of us. And likewise, that can be said about RGB, red, green, and blue. Lighting, well, it's more than red. Red, green, blue make up all of the colors. So you have like a multitude of 16 million colors to choose from on case lighting that has nothing to do with your computer's performance, with your computer's reliability, with the sound of the computer, none of it. It's just hubcaps on a lawnmower. Maybe I can get my sister to make a nice hubcaps on a lawnmower thumbnail for this video. And again, it's not to disparage those other YouTube creators. I think they're all wonderful. They're great. Anybody who loves tech is good in my book. But I feel it's all very extremist and one-sided, and it doesn't really take a fair and practical look at the real world, which is, representative of the vast majority of computer owners out there. It is my intent for my videos to be in plain English and approachable and understandable to everyday computer users who just want a little bit more control over their computer. And there's nothing like building your own computer. If you've never done it before, you will never understand that feeling that you'll get every day when you turn it on and when you use it, that this tool that you're using to connect to the world was created with your own hands. And I promise you it'll be the best computer you have ever used in your life. I promise you when you're done building it, you're going to want to build another one. And I promise you, you will never go back to another pre-built again. That is a guarantee. I never, ever get emails of regret from people who've done it for the first time. And people have emailed me from 12 years old to just the other day, I got an email from a gentleman who's 82 years old. So this has nothing to do with age. This has nothing to do with intelligence. This has to do with you believing in yourself and having the desire and the curiosity to want to have a hand in something that you rely on every day, that you create that thing that you rely on each and every day. I mean, does a day go by where you don't use a computer? And so the fact that you've hand built it makes a special connection that words cannot express, and it's only something people who've built computers truly understand. Now, that being said, I've never intended for my videos to be a commercial for my business, but what turns out happening is people watch the videos, they see the how-tos, and they reach out to me and for various reasons can't or won't build their own computer, and they've asked me to do it. So what you see behind me are parts that customers are paying for, and they've asked me to build these systems for them based on videos they've seen me build before. And this particular configuration, I'm telling you, if I had $1,000 or under $1,000 to spend on a brand new machine today, towards the end of May in 2020, these are the parts I would build with. Now I realize that there are people out there that would prefer AMD for various reasons, and that's well and good for you. If it was my money, this is what I would build for me, right? I don't need you to approve it. I don't need you to like it. Nor do you, when you build yours, need me to like it or anybody else, okay? Now that being said, what are these parts? Well, as I've mentioned, you've seen this built several times on this channel before. This is the H370 HD3 motherboard. These were $99. I think it's an amazing price for such a capable motherboard. You're not going to be doing any overclocking on this board. We're going to pair that with what I think is the best value in solid state NVMe drives right now. This is ADATA's XPG SX8100. It's 2 terabytes and it's extraordinarily fast. It's darn near as fast as the Samsung 970 EVO Plus. And I was using the budget Intel 660p series of drives until the prices started going up on them. Now, because the price has gone up on those Intel 660ps, I tried a gigabyte drive, which was right around the same price and right around the same speed. And for about $20 more, I can go a third faster. Look, if you're going to spend $220 for storage, what is another 20 bucks at 240 if it means going 33% faster? There are people that spend $600 in liquid cooling and they threaten to destroy their CPU by delidding it and replacing the thermal material with liquid metal, which over the years dries out and becomes a problem. But never mind all that. They'll spend hundreds of dollars to eke out an extra 10 or 13, maybe 15% in performance of frequency. And it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of work, and there's some risk of parts being damaged. Even if not damaged in the process, then over time through the overclocking process. This flat out of the box, straight out of the box, is all ready to go at 33% faster than an Intel drive or the Gigabyte drive or several of those other QLC-based drives. And these, right now, are about $240, $250, right in there. Amazon prices fluctuate daily. The other day, this was $240, and they offered a $15 instant coupon, which made it $225. That made it $6 cheaper. Then the next day, it was $229 with no coupon, which was $5 more than it was the other times. That's $230. Today, I think it's right around $240. And, as for reliability, I've yet to see a solid state drive of any form factor, M.2 or 2.5 inch. I've never seen one fail. And again, that's not to say they don't fail. Of course they fail. Everything fails. You and I will fail. However, I have never had a customer bring me a computer with a failed solid state drive, nor has any solid state drive I've ever installed failed. So I've had some flaky solid state drives. I had that weird gigabyte issue with that AMD motherboard, but then it worked fine in the Intel board. So, I'm a little suspicious that if I'm going to see a failed one, it's probably going to be that one. And as a result, I'm not picking any more gigabyte solid state drives because for the price, once again, I can go 33% faster and not have any of those boot issues. So this is 2 terabytes of storage, and this is about as reasonably large of storage as you're going to get in the M.2 form factor, currently the end of May 2020. Now, the good people over at Sabrent, I have to emphasize the good people because they are sending me a 4 terabyte NVMe drive, which I believe is QLC, so it's not a speed demon, but it's 4 terabytes on the same form factor, and it's like $800. And you've got to say, well, wait a minute, 230 times 2 would be 460, and that would be 4 terabytes. So why is a 4 terabyte drive so much more money? I asked Sabrent that question, and they said it's a matter of the cost of the chips. The chips being used on these drives are mass produced, and therefore it lowers the price. The 4 terabyte drives, the chips aren't being produced in those quantities, and it costs more money to manufacture. Furthermore, Sabrent also has an 8 terabyte M.2 drive available. It's intended for enterprise use, meaning big corporate offices, places like data centers, Google, things like that. And I don't even know what the price on that. I didn't even ask, but we can assume it's going to be double the 4 terabyte, maybe a little bit more, probably somewhere around the $2,000 range if I had to guess. So I'm looking forward to more Sabrent products now that I've got a great contact. Say hello over to William at Sabrent for reaching out to me and for working as a liaison between myself and the company to help grow this relationship. And I do like the Sabrent products I've been using. So, immediately right out of the gate, it's a company that I'm very interested in seeing more from. And it's always good when you get acknowledged by these companies. I have plenty of companies that I've never heard of before reaching out to me from China, asking what it would cost to, put a link in my video for a lot of file recovery software. I don't know what's up with that. Tons and tons and tons of file recovery software. Nobody should ever need file recovery software. You should be backing up or making copies of anything that you've created, photos, music, data, so that if anything happens to it, and something will happen to it eventually, you just don't know when it's going to happen, that you can fall back on your copy. You should never, ever need file recovery software. And that being said, I'm not accepting any of these sponsorship offers because I don't know the software. I don't know how good it is. I don't know how reliable it is. I don't know if it's worth the money they're charging. I don't even know how much they're charging. And unlike the big YouTube tech channels here, they've got employees, they've got overhead that I don't have, and they'll take deals I won't take because they've got employees to pay and they've got expenses. It comes with the territory unless you're a self-made millionaire and you're self-financing. I don't anticipate ever getting that big, but it is my intent to always maintain the integrity of my channel as a technician rather than as an entertainer. And if it means I'm turning away money, the justification I hear from other YouTube content creators is I'm not forcing anybody to buy it. I'm not even saying they should buy it. I'm simply making them aware it exists and they're getting paid to do that. It could be a couple $100, could be a couple $1,000. I'm not holding a gun to anybody's head. I'm not making them buy it. And that's how they sleep at night. I don't work that way. If it's something I don't use myself, if it's something I don't truly believe in or that I think truly is a value to my viewer, then I'm simply not going to discuss it. Or if I think it might be a value and I test it here and the test turns out to be bad, I'm going to be honest with you. And if it means losing a sponsorship over that, then that's not a sponsorship I would want anyway. So when I talk about potential sponsorships with companies, I've got this filter they've got to go through. And it's a pretty fine filter. It was brought to my attention, and it's really stuck with me, that it's pretty difficult to be my sponsor because you've got to have a product that's a good value. You've got to have a product that's been around. It can't be something brand new, or a company that's brand new, rather, that we don't know anything about, that could take your money and go and file for bankruptcy in 2 months. And it's got to be a product I use. And so those are few and far between. Companies like AData and Acronis, Sabrent, RoboForm. I would take a sponsorship deal from Coca-Cola, but they don't answer my emails. There are companies, certainly I'll take deals from, but the vast majority of the companies offering are companies I've never heard of, and they want me to sell you to them. They want me to sell my audience to you. That's what these other big YouTube tech channels are effectively doing. You signed up and you subscribed, and then they use that to come up with a number to justify a certain number that the sponsor has to pay, effectively selling you. So you want to talk about cookies or privacy, you want to talk about how Microsoft makes money from you. These big YouTube content creators are making money from you. The bigger your subscriber base, that's what you're selling, right? When somebody says, hey, what's it going to cost for you to make a video about my product? And then what you'll see is a lot of the same manufacturer over and over again. There's no coincidence why you see so much Asus product with Newegg. It's not because they like each other. Well, they do like each other, but I assure you there's a financial incentive for the parties involved to make those videos. And there has to be, because the videos cost a lot of money to make. They've got a full studio with a full film crew with full editing. How does that all get paid for? And so just be aware when you're watching these tech channels, especially the big channels, if you keep seeing a certain manufacturer more than others, that they are more than likely getting paid to bring that content to you. And if they are getting paid, then how sincere and how genuine is the information? And maybe they say, well, I would have done it anyway. Well, would they? And are they being kinder with some of the faults because they don't want to upset the sponsor? So they'll say, well, it's kind of I'll tell you when something's bad. It's not that bad kind of thing. Who knows? How will we ever know? So by maintaining myself as being essentially sponsor-free, no, you know what? That changes today. I'm excited to announce RoboForm has jumped on board, and I'm going to start putting a RoboForm link on the bottom of every video. And I'm not going to bombard you with RoboForm, you know. Uh, they're there to experiment with me to try and figure out what's the most effective way without being annoying of offering you guys a discounted deal on the product, which I use myself. I've been using it for over 15 years. And I'm honored and I'm excited to bring on, after what's it been, 12 years, my very first sponsor. Now, they're not a big head sponsor, you know, they're a little sponsor, but nonetheless, that is a milestone for me. And I couldn't have picked a better first time sponsor than the folks at RoboForm. They are absolutely amazing to work with. And the deal they offered you guys, what was it, last month? I've never seen them offer a deal that good to anybody ever before. So that made me feel good that they did something special just for my audience. And that's led to this little sponsorship opportunity, which again is kind of a trial run for the next 3 months. And you know, if it's very little response, obviously if they're spending more than they're making, and we'll have to revisit the sponsorship idea. On the other hand, if it's working really well, hopefully they'll renew, and it'll continue to help bring more content to the channel without questioning my journalistic integrity, which is very important to me. So now that I've gone completely off the rails, I'm going to start over again with the parts that are involved in today's build. For the sake of my poor sister, Linda, who has to edit these, I'm going to give her a nice clean edit point right here. Today's parts, we're using the H370 HD3 motherboard from Gigabyte. This was a $99 motherboard before the coronavirus pandemic. I assume it will still return to normal when things return to normal. We're pairing it with a Core i7-9700K. It's a bit overkill, honestly. Some people don't understand that the K processor doesn't just mean it's unlocked. It's also 10% faster than the non-K version of the same chip. So there's a 9700. It's a little cheaper. It's 10% slower. Remember we talked about all the money overclockers would spend just to get 10% or 15% an increase? And oftentimes these chips will go on sale to be the same price or just a few dollars more than the non-K version. They also have a KF version of the chip, which is the 10% faster, but they've removed the or disabled the onboard video from the chip for people who are just going to add their own graphics card anyway. And that brings the price of the chip down about $30, which makes it a really good deal. Now, for the RAM, I've got some Corsair Vengeance RAM. This was used in a previous build. They ended up changing the RAM out, so this is still brand new RAM. I believe each one of these sticks is 16 gigs for a total of 32. You know we're going to cool it all down with the Mugen 5 cooler. We've got an EVGA 550 watt power supply, very inexpensive. This is not 80 plus, but it is from the folks at EVGA, and they make really good quality power supplies. We've got a DVD reader writer. Still, most of my customers are asking for those. Sometimes they say, I guess I don't need it. And then they go, you know what, for 20 bucks, let's just put it in there just in case. That usually is the way the conversation goes. Once again, on the storage, we're using the ADATA SX8100 2 terabyte NVMe storage, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the best value in storage, period. When it comes to specifically NVMe storage, you can go cheap, you can go fast, or you can go with the XPG 8100, which is nearly as fast as the $400, $450 Samsung drive of 2 terabytes, the 970 Evo Plus. But it's only a few dollars more than Intel 660p, which used to be about $100 per terabyte, and now the price has gone up again through the pandemic. So right around $240 is a great price for this drive, available on Amazon. All the parts are listed in the links below this video. Of course, the case is the Corsair 200R. I have yet to find a case anywhere close to as useful, as thoughtful, and as price aggressive as the 200R. Now, when I was buying these, they were as cheap as $55. They were typically right around $59.99. Then they went to 65. Currently, these cases are going for $75, and it's still a bargain as far as I'm concerned, even at $75. There's been a lot of rumor on the internet regarding the discontinuation of this case or of the Mugen power supply cooler. It's all rumors. None of it. These parts are all made. Sometimes, like during this pandemic, they run out and they have to wait for manufacturing to catch up. So if you click on any of the links in the video below and it says it's out of stock at Amazon and they don't know if they'll be getting it back in stock, at least for the next 6 to 10 months, I would assume all of these parts will continue to be available. Once we hit 2021 and beyond, then I don't know because the manufacturing will shift over to newer chipsets and different sockets, and that may require different cooling. We'll see how that goes. Coolers are less likely to go discontinue than a motherboard because motherboards evolve rapidly, and the coolers can often continue to work with different versions and models of boards. We'll have to see how that pans out in the real world, but that's generally the way it works. So this is, again, the same build you've seen me do before. If you buy these exact parts and you've never built a computer before, there's a very good chance that you're going to succeed on your first attempt, and it's going to be a very rewarding experience. If you try to cut corners, and I want to emphasize this to first-time builders, if you're trying to save money by buying returned parts or substituting a part for a different part, you are now opening up your risk, which may impact your overall experience from what I am predicting. So my prediction assumes that you're not buying any returned parts and you're not substituting any parts. And I'm not saying that if you do that, you will have a bad experience. I'm saying you'll be more likely to have a bad experience than if you follow along with brand new parts and if you use the same parts you see here. The optical drive is clearly optional. You don't have to have that. But everything else, and you can pretty much swap the RAM out for whatever you want. That CPU, that cooler, that motherboard, that power supply in this case are your core components that you don't want to mess around with your build. The case may not seem that big of a deal to you, but I can assure you the case can take a 1 hour build to 4 hours because of the difficulty in working within it. Also, the cheaper cases typically have sharp edges, panels that are easily damaged. I've had cheap cases arrive where the front panel wires were pinched in the case store and I had to fix them. And the cost of sending the case back was practically the cost of buying a new case. So I had to fix it myself. Nothing like buying a brand new product straight out of the box that I had to fix myself because I was buying an inexpensive case. When I say inexpensive, they were like $35. And I got what I paid for, and I made up for it with an investment of my time I wouldn't have had to have spent if I had spent more on the case. So we're sort of weighing time versus money on this. And as an experienced technician, dealing with open box parts and unexpected problems due to fitment issues or sharp case edges or whatever it happens to be, it's one thing coming from a place of experience. But if you've never built a computer before, there's only one chance to make a good first impression. And you may never want to do it again if you set yourself up for a challenge like that. So that's why I emphasize that if you are a first-time builder, don't go second guessing anything I'm telling you unless you're prepared to deal with those consequences. And the amount of savings you've got to ask yourself, really, is it worth the risk? Because I don't think you're going to save very much on a motherboard. It doesn't get much cheaper than $99. But be that as it may, I put it out there. You do with that information whatever you'd like to do. Hello to all my friends in the chat. I didn't say hello to folks, and I missed a few contributions, so let me give a few shouts out before we officially get started here. So thank you to Orlando Brief, contributed $2 to start things off. Michael Dane with a $50 contribution. Michael's so generous. Thank you. He says he just wants to say thank you to me for your help and info. Michael seems like a great guy. I hope to meet you in person one day, Michael. Michael Martin contributed £2. Says, Carey, I still can't get that 22-inch Lazy Susan in the UK. You know, you got to be patient with the pandemic going on, borders being closed. It's really affecting a lot of distribution. not just with computer parts, obviously that's furniture and it's happening everywhere. So patience, you've lived without it this long. What's another, month or two? Wait till the fall. You can add it to an Amazon wish list and just kind of check it. Or I think even you can have Amazon email you. Madi, hello, Madi. Madi's contributed $5, and I got a message today from Anthony Remus in Nevada, who's building Madi's machine on my behalf. And I think he shipped it out to me today. And when it arrives, I'm going to review Anthony's build quality. And I'm going to just kind of, Anthony did a very mild overclock, probably the most conservative overclock you can do by just raising the TDP so that the processor runs closer to that 5.3 limit more often. That's about as overclocked as I care to take it. And I can't wait to see the quality of Anthony's work because I got a feeling he and I are going to be working more together. Andrew Dorset's contributed $5 New Zealand. He says, "Here's another donation towards this amazing community." Thank you, Andrew. John Craig with a £5 contribution. He says, "No backup, no brain." It's definitely a no-brainer. That's right, John. Thomas Robinson's contributed £2 and says, "Excellent videos, Carey." Scott McFarlane contributed $4.99. He says, "Hey, Carey and crew, I hope you're having a good day." Hugh Wong joins us from Canada. He says, "Who is the CEO of Sabrent? I can't find the info." I don't know. I'm working with a gentleman named William, and that's all I can tell you because that's all I know. I could certainly ask William. I'm sure he can point me to the info. Why do you want to know? Andrew Epperson's contributed $5. He says, "Carey, I was planning to reach out to you for a PC build. What do you recommend as far as figuring out the amount of money needed?" Andrew, the baseline is right around $1,000. And then depending on if you want a graphics card, graphics cards can be $150 to $3,000. In fact, there's a Cyberpunk 2077 edition of a 2080 Ti that's $5,000. So if you're building a gaming machine, whatever the price of the graphics card is, add $1,000. And that should be about the price of your system. And you'll still need to provide your own monitor, keyboard, mouse, and speakers. And that's because your eyes and your ears and how things feel are unique to you. I don't sell those things. I can't tell you what keyboard is best. I can't tell you what sounds best. I can't tell you what monitor looks the best or will fit the best on your desk. I don't have your eyes. I don't have your ears. I don't know how things feel to you. So for those items, you'll pick those yourself, and anything you pick will work with the system. Rick Lakes has contributed $5. Bill Regan contributed $50. Wow, very generous, Bill. Thank you guys very much for all of your support. And again, I want to welcome on RoboForm as my very first sponsor. So you'll be hearing a lot more from RoboForm, but I'm not gonna beat you over the head with it. But absolutely very excited to bring them on board, and it's something I've been looking to do in a way that wouldn't interfere with my journalistic integrity, and we're off to a great start. Hello to all my friends in blue. Thanks you guys so much for joining me today. Right now we have how many people? 808 people watching all over the world. And I want to remind everybody that buying the parts for your computer right now, there are some parts that are just really difficult to get. Power supplies can be hard to find. Some graphics cards can be hard to find. Even and some solid state storage options are hard to find. But overall, motherboards are still easy to get. Cases, for the most part, or at least the cases I use, plenty of Corsair 200Rs going around, no problem getting those. The Intel 9700 series of chips and their Core i5 series of chips, widely available. Core i9, a little more difficult to acquire those at this time, but you're not really getting that much more for the additional amount you're paying, in my opinion. On the AMD side, AMD CPUs and motherboards are very easy to get. RAM is super easy to get right now. No issues with acquiring RAM. Where you're going to find your difficulty primarily is going to be in your choice of storage. Again, if you can pony up $240, say, for a 2 terabyte ADATA, regardless if it's Intel or AMD, I think you're going to be very happy with this choice. And these optical drives are plentiful. There's no shortage of those. Fewer people want them today and their popularity is decreasing every day. Uh, Most people are just downloading everything online. So when it comes to building your computer, there are certain things you should not buy ahead of time. Don't buy the CPU first and then wait to get the rest of your parts because it's going to likely depreciate in value and there'll always be another new CPU coming out soon. So if you buy the case, if you buy the power supply, these are things, even the CPU cooler, these are things that generally stay pretty well locked in on price and don't go obsolete anytime soon. Also, your warranty starts ticking the day of the receipt, not the day you take it out of the box. I've got some brand new cases sitting, brand new in a box, where I haven't even cut the tape on the box. And that's eating into the warranty time. Every month it sits is 1 month less of warranty, but it's a computer case, right? So what do I care? A lot of RAM is lifetime warranted for most RAM, and at least from the big manufacturers. And power supplies like from EVGA, they have a range of warranties from 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, even 10-year and 12-year warranties available through EVGA power supplies. And power supply prices don't change much. So for that reason, it's okay if you've got money burning a hole in your pocket and you can't wait. It's safe to buy the case, the power supply, and potentially the cooler if you're not going to wait too long. But save buying anything with a circuit board besides the power supply. That means the motherboard, the CPU, even the RAM, because there could be a new chipset coming out between now and the time that you decide you finally got the money. And for all you know, DDR5 RAM could be out by then, rendering what you bought brand new in a box as obsolete for your build. So Bordura Catalan, who I don't think is in the chat room yet today, joins us quite frequently in the chat here. And he's building a monster of a computer. And he's been acquiring the parts over a year. And he's already ready to replace some of the parts, even though he hasn't even started the build yet. So, I mean, if you've got the money to throw around like that, it's great. But it's very, very expensive to do it that way. And there was one other thing I was going to tell you today. There's a great big box behind me that came from this company called Better Made. Better Made makes snacks, potato chips, things like that. And they're based out of Detroit. That's a little package from home right there that makes me all giddy and happy. I've got all kinds of good little snacks in there. You want to see? Want to see what I got? This is their party mix. So not only do I have like regular potato chips in there, I've got stuff from Better Made I've never had. I've got this movie theater gourmet popcorn. I've got these potato sticks. Little secret, I love potato sticks. Yeah. Even if these kill me, I'll die a happy man, okay? I'm just saying, this is my health food. These I didn't even know existed. These are jalapeno cheddars flavored cheese puffs. That sounds 100% organic, doesn't it? They have this little party pack that they offer at bettermade.com, and it includes what is this? Oh, well, you wouldn't expect a guy living in Arizona would order tortilla chips from Detroit, but there you have it. Sprinkle a little shredded cheddar cheese on these and put it on some aluminum foil in the oven and melt that cheese down. Yeah, that'll be good. And then what do we have here? Party mix. I'm not sure what's in there, but that bag is definitely not going to be big enough. And this one here, cheddar cheese popcorn. And then there's just regular good old-fashioned potato chips in there as well. And it's kind of funny because this whole package is like $18 and it's like $20 to ship it. Do you know what? It's still cheaper than getting the gasoline in the car to drive over there to pick it up. Oh, here's another one. Butter braided pretzels. So as you can tell, I'm a health nut. This, Carey, what makes you happy? Well, there you go. Food from Detroit, Michigan, my home. It's like a little care package that says, "We miss you. Please eat us." Okay. I should throw a link in the chat room for bettermade.com. It's probably something that's more meaningful to people from Detroit. I don't think there's anything unique or special that someone outside of Detroit would necessarily say, wow, these are better than the local potato chips here. I don't know. But for me, it's home. And there's an emotional connection there that makes it taste better. Look at this. My ice is already melted and I haven't even started the build yet. So hello to Nick Poverman and Thomas Robinson, Gabriel Granados in stealth mode. Hello to Rick Lakes as well as William R., Catherine Anna Hauserman, Samuel Ramos. Thank you for your contribution recently, Samuel, as well. Photo Mix Media, Kelly Stewart. Kelly, thank you for your contributions. He says, Carey, I just sent you an Amazon gift card for $100. I hope that you can use it. Kelly, oh man, thank you so much. I was getting things set up earlier today and I'm going to break out. I decided just to do something a little different. Pull out one of my older cameras. And I have some micro HDMI to HDMI cables that I have to use to hook these into hook the camera into the capture card. Right inside this little door, there's a micro HDMI plug. And when I was getting things set up, I have some of these new plugs I ordered, and when I was setting up at the other studio, I couldn't get the camera to work, and turned out it was a bad cord. It was brand new. And it looks like out of that same batch, I got another bad cord. So luckily I had one more left. I thought I had two spares. So now I'm using this one and had to throw the other one away. I now have 0 spares and I need to go on Amazon. I'm going to order 3 more 25-foot long micro HDMI to HDMI cords so that I can plug it in like so and then walk around with the camera, that I have enough slack that I can, let's see if I can find my input for this camera. Camera 3 should be right here. This is what I'm looking at. So this is me talking to you. And then that's me watching the feed and watching the chat. So when I tell you I'm seeing a picture in a picture, sometimes I can't see things because it's so small. That's my view. And then you can see all my snacks. And you can see the Zynos build over there waiting for me to get back to it as well. And then, of course, what I can do when I start doing the build is I can hold this camera and with the extra long cord like that, you can see what I can see. So thank you for the Amazon gift card because I will be using it to buy, it's simple, write a cable. It's not that complicated. But if you don't have it, it shuts you down real quick, and stuff like that. I like to have lots of spares because they just break, especially when my studio is always having to be taken down and reset up again because it's here in the kitchen. Once I have a proper studio and I can leave things set up, I'm sure I'm less likely to have a cable related issue. It's the plugging and unplugging constantly and but that's causing some sort of a disconnect at some point. And these were brand new cables. The 2 bad ones were brand new, just bad. And I'm starting to think, I bought those, I think they were an Amazon warehouse deal. And they're inexpensive, so I didn't check them. And it's been far longer than the return period. So, what are they, $8, $12? I just throw them in the trash can. But I really should have checked them. I just thought, how often do you get a bad cable? Well, I think I know why they were returned. I'm pretty sure those were returned cables. I was saving some money. Anyway, thank you, Samuel. Also, just saying a few random shouts out to Sharon Idle, Aurora's team, Jeffrey, Vince Morath, and Tony Wallow. Tony joins us. Tony's a good friend of the channel. Rick Lakes and John R. And hello to RLT. Hello to, who else we got in here? Daniel Means and Gary Tatum. Hayden Jones, OG Gaming, DJ Matrix, Bob Shoemaker. This build today is intended for a gentleman. His name is Thomas Beckenstow. And I know Tom is anxious, and I told him I would start building it this week. And I can't remember Tom's exact configuration requirement, so I'm going to kind of build this generically. And then I need to go back and look at my notes for Thomas, as well as talk to Thomas to make sure that I've got the right amount of RAM. I'm assuming he wanted a DVD drive. So in the meantime, I'm going to make the video as the build. And then if anything is different than what Thomas wanted, then I'll make those modifications for Thomas. And I'll come back and I'll do a follow-up video on what I've had to change. But with so much going on right now, it's just important that I keep work moving forward. And then once the machine is built, making small changes for individual, requirements. If he needs a Wi-Fi card or something, it's easy to slap something like that in. Or if he wants a different kind of memory or a different amount of memory, it's 2 minutes to pop the memory out, put new memory in. So I will basically, what I'm saying is I'm going to customize it for Thomas. But for now, this is sort of a generic build for everybody that everybody can easily follow. And you can feel free to make these little modifications yourself. I just wouldn't do any part substitution apart from what I've already mentioned. Okay. I know Thomas will probably be watching this. So hi, Thomas, and thanks for your patience. The good folks over at Lake Hickory, what's the name? Lake Hickory. They ordered a machine for me about a year ago, and they're very happy with it. And now they want a machine for video editing, and I've explained to them everything is backed up right now. Parts are hard to get. I've got a gentleman in Florida who wants me to build a computer for him. I said I may not be able to get to it till August. And he says, well, I can't get the parts I want now anyway, so what choice do I have? I guess I'll wait. And that's the bell. Hold on a second, guys. Give me just one moment. Yeah, speaking of which, computer part that's been delayed for a couple weeks just now showed up, which is good because that means I can do another build. Anyway, we'll see what opportunities exist for me to build that computer for this gentleman in Florida. I honestly didn't expect him to say that waiting till August was going to be okay. But he's at a point where he's like, well, I can't get the parts I want to do my build. Everybody's sold out. And, if you have an opportunity before then, please let me know. So things continue to be busier than I myself can handle in a week. I'm very, very well backed up. On top of trying to get the other studio set up, I was there all day yesterday trying to get some new light fixtures and stuff installed. And man, I'll tell you what, it just feels like real slow going. But I just keep saying to myself, everything I get done, no matter how minor, is one less thing I have to do. And eventually, at some point, I will have it all done, and I'll be like, wow, there's nothing. I wish there was something for me to do. I don't see that coming anytime soon, but it's coming. So in the meantime, Jimmy says hello. Jimmy's just down here saying hello to everybody. Hi, buddy. You gonna help me build a computer today? Hmm? Is it an Intel? Yes, it is an Intel. And does it taste like chicken? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to eat it. Well, if you're not going to eat it, can I have it? Oh, Jimmy. Always the same with you, isn't it? Are you going to sit for me? Sit. Will you give me a paw? Sometimes the dogs don't understand the words, but they understand the body language. Will you give me a paw? That's a good boy. Can I have the other paw? Can I have both paws? Can I have them both? Up. That is a good boy. Look, now you can see what it looks like to look down on me. Yeah, you're a good boy. Solid. Look at that. Oh, there's dog butt. You're a good boy. He says, get on with it already. All right, don't be so bossy. What are you, a cat? Whew. Yes, as mentioned in the chat room, if if you like videos like this, if you like to see me doing the builds, you can hit the thumbs up button. That gives it a like. It lets me know that you like to see more videos like this, if and when I ever get to the actual build. And of course, if you want to know when I go live, it's sort of as time permits. Right now, I do hope to someday, when the studio is done, be on a schedule, at least partially. And you can do that by hitting the subscribe button, and there's a little bell icon. If you click the bell to turn on your notifications, you will be alerted whenever a new video is posted or whenever I go live. So those are two things you can do that help support the channel and also help you if you're interested in, you know, getting the freshest content and being one of the earliest viewers of the new content. Big shout out and thank you to my sister who published a fantastic video earlier today where she compares upgrading a 4-year-old laptop to, this laptop was $500 4 years ago, and she put $150 into it. And now she's comparing it to a $1,700 laptop she just purchased in performance and portability, battery life. It's only like 11 minutes long, but it's chock full of information. It's very well shot. She did a great job. She did it all on her own, and she put me to shame. So check out that video. It's chock filled with information. I think you will find very interesting. It's not the enthusiast level of impracticality. This is real life, and it may give you something to think twice about if you're looking to perhaps replace a current laptop versus upgrading it. You think you might be surprised at how little the difference is between what is essentially a 4-year-old or 5-year-old $650 investment versus a brand new $1,700 investment. So with that, let's go ahead and start today's build. I often will prep the case first, and prepping the case just means putting in the IO shield, the optical drive, and the power supply. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now, coming up next week, I'm going to do something I don't think has ever been done on YouTube before. I know I've never done it, and I don't know anybody who has. We're going to do a remote computer build. And if you want to join us and follow along, buy all the same parts. Not in this build, but there's a build I'm doing with Steve Bass. Steve lives in California, and I have ordered all the same parts for Steve and myself. We're going to do an AMD build, and I'm going to show you, it's going to be the similar, side-by-side Skype kind of conversation. And I'm going to say, okay, Steve, I need you to take the panels off of the case. Here's how you do that. And then Steve's going to do it. Then I'm going to say, okay, now I need you to prep the motherboard. Here's how we, take the motherboard out of the box. Here's how the CPU goes in. And now it's your turn, and he's going to do it. Now, if you buy those same parts, you can follow right along with us. Steve is not a computer builder. He has never built a computer before. He did do an upgrade with me a couple years ago. But it just goes to show you that anybody who wants to, anybody who has the ambition or the desire and the money to buy the parts can do this. The parts were under $800. I think we're at $800. It is an AMD build. So that's why it's a little more budget friendly. And you won't have to worry about us going too quickly for you. You know, like a lot of times on these cooking shows on TV, they'll throw a bunch of ingredients and mix it up. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm still adding the first ingredient and you're already putting it in the oven. This is far more realistic in that I will demonstrate one step and then Steve will repeat that step, having never done it before, however long that takes. Then I will do step two, and then Steve will do step two. And if you're watching along with us, you can follow those same exact steps. Assuming you have the same parts, you can expect the exact same detail in those steps to be followed for you. And you're going to end up with a great computer that you're going to be very, very happy with. And again, you're going to want to build another one. So that'll be, I think, Tuesday, a week from today, either Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm not sure. And then I'm going to bring Steve on, I think, tomorrow. We're going to talk about Wi-Fi systems, not Wi-Fi systems. We're going to talk about like smart switches, smart light bulbs, smart outlets, things, the ability to schedule and control lights and anything plugged into an outlet through an app on your phone using a system from TP-Link called Casa. I also have a friend of mine with a large 4,200 square foot house that kept having Wi-Fi dropouts. And I don't have the ability to test any Wi-Fi mesh systems. And what's interesting is, you know, Steve Bass was in a unique situation with his home in that it wasn't that large, but it's just built of materials from way back in the day that are not Wi-Fi friendly. And I sent him the Amazon Eero mesh Wi-Fi system to test, and it's the best Wi-Fi system he's ever had in his house. Like it fully saturates the house with Wi-Fi, which he's never had before, including the front yard and backyard. Now, this friend of mine with a 4,200 square foot house, multi-level house, also has Wi-Fi issues, particularly in the corners of the house, and he wants to be able to go in his garage and have access. And I was going to send him the Eero system, but for some reason, the price on Amazon went from $199, which is what I paid for it to send to Steve, to $249.99. And I don't know why. It's the same exact product that jumped $50 in price. So I said, you know, I'm really liking these TP-Link products. Let me look at TP-Link's Wi-Fi mesh system. And TP-Link has one specifically made to go through like concrete, thick walls. It's supposed to cover 6,000 square feet. So on a 4,200 square foot house, he shouldn't have any problem. And so I will bring him on after he's had some time to work out any kinks and get familiar with it. I don't want to bring him on too soon. And then he will tell you his experience. Again, he's not a he's not a computer technician like me. He does technical work, but not like this. So when he's setting it up, he's can set it up just like anybody else would. He's not a Wi-Fi guru by any means. And he'll share his experience, what was difficult, what was easy, and finally, are all the dead spots gone, and are all the problems that he was having gone away. So that'll be coming up here in the next week or two as well. So lots of irons in the fire and several product reviews. As I mentioned, Sabrent's 4 terabyte drive will be coming. I'll review that. They've got a new enclosure for NVMe drives that's toolless, which I'll give a review to. And the Pure Rock, is it Pure Rock? Be Quiet's got a new cooler out, and I'm going to compare that with the Mugen 5 and the Hyper 212 Evo to see which one cools better, is quieter, is easier to install, and is a good price value. So lots of stuff still coming up. So prepping the case, once we get the panels off, obviously, we can go ahead and put the power supply in. That's super easy. Again, I'm using the EVGA, the 550 watt, because that was the cheapest thing I could find around the wattage that I wanted. Now, ideally, I would probably go with an 80 plus power supply. I'm even surprised that that EVGA offers a non 80 plus. And the 80 plus just refers to its efficiency. And the reason that's important to me isn't because I'm some big, ecological guy. I'm concerned, but it doesn't drive my purchase decisions. But but I know that the parts required to achieve that efficiency are good quality components that are less likely to fail. So what I'm looking for when I see 80 plus, I'm looking at a reliability rating. Of course, an 80 plus power supply can fail. They're just less likely to. Now, everything I do on my channel, these live videos are unscripted. I never know what I'm going to say until I say it. And all the parts you see, I'm cutting the tape, I'm removing the cellophane. All these parts have never been opened. There's no rehearsal. And, you know, in my life as a technician, this is the way it is as a tech. When you get called out to a customer location to deal with a technical issue, you have no idea what you're going to encounter. There is no rehearsal. But the customer does want you in and out of there quickly because you're typically billing them by the hour, and they don't want you learning on their dime. They don't want to see you reading a manual. You're supposed to know this. That's why they hired you. You're supposed to be the expert. So in a customer's eyes, an expert doesn't read manuals. Just saying. A lot of people that sort of scoff at the fact that I won't take the time, in most cases, to read these manuals that come with these parts. And it's particularly frustrating when it's a part I'm unfamiliar with. I've built with these parts before, so I really don't need the manual. But with other parts, I just try and figure it out because that's what I've been doing for the last nearly 30 years is solving customers' issues. And rarely do customers have the same issues or the same hardware. And you've got to think on your feet. It's not always, it would be a luxury to be able to prepare and have every tool and every bit of information you would need to go into a job. But it's sort of like a, I don't know, sort of like a surgeon cuts somebody open, and there's only so much you can see with the x-rays, and there's so much you can expect. But then once you're in there, and most surgeons will tell you, you know, there's possible that when we're in there, we see something that we didn't see on the x-rays. You need to sign off to give us permission to handle that if that should come up while we're in there. And I'm sure that there are rarely two tumors that are exactly the same and that require a certain technique to remove them in this example. And you've got to be able to think on your feet. You've got to understand basically the way the human body works and use that knowledge to adapt to the patient. Now, I'm in no way, shape, or form comparing myself in knowledge or importance to a surgeon. But I am saying that the thinking on your feet and that there's only so much you can prepare for. When you get in there, you're committed to seeing the job through. You can't just throw in the towel and say, it's too complicated. As a technician, you're going to go out of business real quick if you do that. Word gets out. You know, you start a job and you can't finish it. Clearly unacceptable for a surgeon. And as a technician, I have seen and I've had jobs where somebody else they had hired started the job and then stopped returning phone calls, didn't have the guts to say, hey, this is over my head. They just, in most cases, they just ghost. They vanish. They don't return calls. And then I get called and they ask me if I can pick up the pieces and put it all back together again. And that's unfortunate because those people who are walking away, that's their opportunity to learn. And even if it means you've got to pay somebody to fix it for you, be sure that they'll let you watch over their shoulder. You use it as an educational opportunity to strengthen your knowledge, and your customer doesn't have to know, right? If you take the system off site, get some help from somebody, have them show you, you use that as your knowledge, return the system back to the customer, get paid, pay the guy that helped you or the gal that helped you. And if it comes up as a loss, that's the cost of business, but it's also the cost of education. And that will empower you. When you just walk away like that, it's shameful. And it's not only shameful to your business, it's shameful just as a human being to commit yourself to something and not be a person of your word to see it through. So, you know, if you're going to start something, finish it, especially if it's for a customer. Not that I should be complaining, you know, it's pretty much paid for my car. In the box with the power supply, it came with some screws. We're going to use the screws that came with the power supply. The case also comes with screws. They're in this little cardboard box I'll pull out here in a moment. And we could use those screws as well. But if the power supply comes with screws, and most do, and the color of the screws matches the color of the case, and in this case they do, my preference is to use those screws. At the end of the day, does it really matter? It's mostly an OCD thing. It's about looks, the familiarity. That's a very common type of screw we've been using with computers for the last 40 years. And the screws that Corsair includes are a bit different, but they'll work. They just look different. So I'm going to use the screws that came with the power supply. This fan draws air in, and it's going to bring the air in and then out through this back. So none of the air in the case actually impacts the power supply at all. And the heat of the power supply doesn't impact anything in the case. This is an enclosed system. It's going to breathe in, and then it's going to breathe out through these holes right here. In, out, all contained in this little black box. And this little black box goes in this bigger black box. There's like a little metal flap right here. And I have to just kind of wiggle and push back until the power supply hits the back wall here. Then I'm going to push it till it hits this back wall. And that's going to line it up with the numerous mounting holes here. And now we'll use these screws that came with the power supply to secure it. That's all there is to that. 4 screws, 1 in each corner that secures our power supply. We can put the optical drive in. That's super, super easy. I'm going to reach a hand in here, and I'm just going to push this piece right here, out that way. This is our optical drive. It's brand new. It's OEM, meaning it doesn't come in a retail box. There's no documentation. Therefore, it doesn't cost as much money to package it up and ship it. You know, they could put about 20 or 40 of these in a big cardboard box with like an egg carton type separator, which saves a lot of money in distribution, and therefore you can buy it at a discounted price because you don't have all that packaging to throw away. You don't have the unwanted documentation. Sometimes they even come with a SATA cable. All that adds to your cost. If that's stuff you don't need, after all, our motherboard's going to have all the cables we need already included. If you don't need all that, why not save a few bucks and buy the drive in a plastic bag? It's brand new. We're going to just slide it in from the front. Anything that's accessible from the front of the computer installs from the front. It does not install from the back. It installs from the front. And there's a little catch right here, this lever right here. And I'm going to pull back on it, let the drive go in here, and it should be flush. And sometimes with these Corsair 200R cases, I have to sort of wiggle on that. And it finds the little mounting hole, and it just sits in there and locks that drive in. I cannot. It's locked in. If I want to take the drive out in the future, I just pull back on this catch and then push the drive forward, and it just comes right back out. It's a completely toolless design, and this case is many years old in design, and it's amazing to me how today finding a case that has a toolless drive installation, the 2.5-inch SSD and 3.5-inch mechanical drive are also toolless, and they work in a similar fashion where the drives slide in and then lock into place with no tools required. And it's something that I think adds a lot of value to this case. Also, unlike a lot of modern cases available today that limit you to maybe 2 SSDs or they route them around the back, you have room for 4 3.5-inch hard drives and 4 solid state drives at the same time with no tools. That's incredible. How come everybody's not doing that? Why is this the exception? And furthermore, why has it been the exception for the last 6 years? That being said, we can also secure the drive, which is not really necessary if you're building locally, if you're building it for yourself. But this is going to get put into the mail. It's going to go FedEx via truck across the surface of the United States to the customer. And in the result, it's going to bounce around a lot. It's going to be handled a lot. And I don't want this drive to come loose. It's unlikely to come loose, but I promise you, if I put a screw on each side, it's never coming loose. So I'm going to do that right now. I just want to pick up that plastic piece I threw on the floor and put that over here. This is the power cable that came with the power supply, the instructions that came with the power supply. The customer will get all this. I'm just going to set it out of the way for now because I don't need it. And to secure the drive in this cardboard box right down here, if we move this little catch, and again, this is the little catch that holds a 3.5-inch drive in toolless, we pull that away and then slide this cardboard box towards us. What we've got in this case, in this box, are all the screws, extra motherboard standoffs, and some nylon zip ties, which I'll just dump out here onto the counter. And then that should be all that's in this box. Hey, there's a Carey in the box. Hey, what are they doing? Stop that. Stop it. All right, just put that there. Now, the nylon zip ties, there's not going to be enough for your whole build here, but I appreciate any case manufacturer that is thoughtful enough to give you a few cheaper cases. The real bargain basement ones that are flimsy material that often have sharp edges generally don't give you anything extra like that. You know what the value of these are? Probably about 2 cents. So when I say extra, I'm not talking about the case manufacturer being extraordinarily generous. This is just very thoughtful. And in the bags of screws, there's several we're not going to use. There's these really long screws. And these for adding an additional fan up to the front if you want to. There's the regular traditional fan screws, and that's for adding more fans up at the top or at the bottom, which we're not going to do. There's additional standoffs, which we're not going to need on this build. And then we've got these coarse threaded and fine threaded screws. And on the coarse threaded screws, those will secure the motherboard in place, and the fine threaded screws, those are for securing 2.5-inch solid state drives and optical drives. So obviously I need the fine threaded screws. The rest of the screws can go over with the documentation that the customer will get all this stuff when they get the computer. So in case they want to upgrade or change anything out in the future, they have the screws necessary to do that. So these, again, are a fine threaded screw. And it's going to take one on each side. I go to the lower one up on the front right here. And then same thing on the other side. Done. I won't need these fine threaded screws for any other parts on this particular build, so I'm going to go ahead and set them aside and keep my work area free of distractions, unnecessary distractions. The final piece, of course, is the I/O shield. That's the piece that's going to go right in here, and that's going to come with your motherboard. It is uniquely designed for the motherboard you purchase. So I'm going to just move this stuff off the motherboard box. And here in the motherboard box, as you can see, we've got our SATA cables, which we'll need one for the optical drive right here. The motherboard itself is on this cardboard tray. The cardboard can come out and be thrown. Don't throw this part. We need this part to be intact. And then finally, all that's left in the box here, apart from somebody's hair, I guess that was free with the motherboard, there's a instruction manual, a driver disk, which we won't use, and finally the I/O shield we were just talking about. I don't want that on my RAM. Now, all of the documentation, all of the spare parts, I want to put them all in this empty motherboard box, and when I ship the computer to the customer will get this box, and in the box will be all the spare parts and documentation. Nothing they should need anytime soon, but anytime they want to upgrade or repair the machine, which could be years from now, you definitely want to have that spare parts, those spare screws and whatnot available to you because they are unique to the case. I'm not saying you couldn't find screws somewhere else, but I don't know where you'd find them apart from going directly to the manufacturer. So best to just hold on to the ones you had. Just put them away somewhere where you could find them for later. So here's the IO shield. It's a pretty basic IO shield here. And we'll just take it out of its plastic bag. And I'll show you there's a grounding strap here, right here. And you see how that's kind of bent down? What can happen when we put the board in is if it bends down completely, it'll block access to that USB port. You won't be able to plug anything in. So I'm going to take this time right now and just kind of bend up on that, not too far. And that's the only one on this IO shield. Some IO shields have several, some have none at all, but it's something to watch for. Building a computer is very, very easy. The devil is in these little details, and as long as you are mindful of those little details, you'll find this process to be as easy as I tell you it is. So to plug this in, we just reach around back here, and with the smaller holes towards the bottom, those are your speaker output and input holes there. I'm going to just try to align one corner and then the other corner right here and push on it. And then I'm going to go to the top and do the same thing, one corner and then the other corner. Now, when you've done that, you'll see oftentimes one corner will pop out, come back down, and then double and triple check it, make sure it's flush and seated correctly. So it will avoid you headaches later on when you go to install the board. You might struggle installing the board if that IO shield is not seated properly. And you'll say, man, he sure did make that look easy. Well, it is easy if you make sure that the IO shield is seated properly when you do that. So just so you know, I see a lot of first-time builders really struggle to get this IO shield in. That's normal. It's not just you. I've installed like 20,000 of those. So through repetition, I've gotten very good at it. If you're doing it for the first time, allow yourself more time and patience to get all those corners seated. And if you want to get better at it, when you're done, pop it out and do it again, and pop it out and do it again until you're comfortable. On the other hand, if you never want to do it again, leave it alone once you get it seated and continue on with your build. I'm just saying the only way you're going to get good at it, like anything else, is by doing it again and again and again. So don't expect to be as quick or to have some of the things that I do work as easily for you, particularly this part here. Allow yourself forgiveness and patience if you've never done it before, and you gotta get a feel for it. And then once it's fully seated, that completes prepping the case, and now we can go to prepping the motherboard. So I'm going to take the motherboard out of its anti-static bag. Now you see I build on top of the motherboard box, and the reason I do that is I don't want to scratch up my countertop. On the bottom of the board there's all these soldering points, all these little silver points, and they will, if you touch them, which you shouldn't because of electrostatic discharge concerns, they can cause you to bleed. They'll go right through your skin. So not only is it safe handling to hold the board by the edges, if you do so, you do not have to worry about wearing an electrostatic strap if you handle the parts the way you see me handle them, which is always by edges. On the other hand, if you feel safer and more confident wearing an electrostatic discharge strap, they're only like $5 or $6, and it won't hurt you to wear it. You won't see me wearing them because I know how to handle the parts correctly, and I've been doing this nearly 30 years, so clearly I must be doing something right. I'm sure it's not just luck that's kept me in business. There are people online that don't understand static, and they don't understand the way it transfers, they don't understand parts, and that lack of education makes them the most feared when they see somebody work without an electrostatic strap, they see a fear in it because of their lack of education. So I don't want you to have your mind poisoned by people who lack a proper academic education in electronics to suggest what I'm telling you isn't true. But I do want you to build according to what makes you comfortable. So if you follow the steps I show you and that makes you comfortable, great. If wearing an electrostatic strap makes you feel comfortable, then you should do that. So I'm not here to dictate to you how it's done, but I do want you to be aware there are others online that will dictate, and those are generally the most uneducated of the people. The lack of education typically results in fear. It results in conspiracy theory and fear. And it is the power of education that can certainly ease a lot of unnecessary anxiety, as well as an understanding the way things work that would negate the how ridiculous some people don't even realize they're sounding by blurting out their level of misunderstanding or, for lack of a better word, ignorance on a subject. It's very easy to be afraid of something you don't understand. Okay. The biggest enemy of fear is education. All right, I need a drink. Now, it looks like I missed a few contributions. I want to give some shouts out to these kind folks here in the community that are helping support this community. So a thank you goes out to, hold on, where's my list? Oh, I've missed quite a few. My apologies, guys. John Olson has contributed $10. He says a little more cheddar for your next chip order. That's great. Thank you, John. Daniel Schroeder has contributed $3.99. Thank you, Daniel. Connor Hodge with $1.99. He says, "What time do you build?" I just kind of hang out, kind of work while we hang out and chat. It's sort of like going to a bar and asking your friend how long it's going to be for him to finish his drink. You know, we're hanging out, we're enjoying each other's company. These videos do get edited down after they air live. So it takes out all the chit chat, gets right to the build. And if you're somebody who's not interested in hanging out with us and you just want to see the builds, there are edited builds available 24/7 here on my channel that you can pick and choose from. I think there's probably well over 100 hours worth of builds that are edited that are available for you to watch anytime you want. But this is live happening right now. And as a result, you know, the interactive community of YouTube is so much different than TV in that you guys get to talk back, you know. And to not take the time to sit here and talk to each other, you might as well watch TV or watch something already pre-recorded or edited. So these videos aren't for everybody. They may not be for you. But Michael Power contributed $7.99 Australian. He says, "Thanks for being honest and non-clickbaity, like other tech channels on YouTube. And thanks for inspiring me and others to build their own PC." Right on, Michael. Hey, thank you for that. I appreciate your contribution and your kind words. Ian, 1989, has contributed £4. Thank you very much, Ian. Going to add some moderators here. Daniel Schroeder contributed again here, 99 cents. Thank you, Daniel. Madi Yoel contributed $2 twice in a row there. Hey, Madi, thank you. Nicholas Heglini's contributed $6.99. He says, "Nice to see a build again. Keep them coming." And Madi's contributed $2 again. Thank you again, Madi. David Kelly Parent with a $10 Canadian contribution, as well as Mira Ora with a $5 contribution. And says somebody is timing people out for no reason. I need a name, please. I'm too busy. I can't scroll through the chat and do that. Zerloth has contributed $2 and has some criticism. You guys need to get along with each other here in this community. And I want you to know that and be aware that it takes two people to have an argument, to have a dispute. And I expect my friends in blue to rise above and not take the bait. So I don't want to hear any excuses from anybody in blue with regards to justifying their behavior. In other words, I expect you to just ignore them. And if there's anybody who's a particular problem, please bring it to my attention so I can handle it. Otherwise, I'm going to start removing the status of those blue individuals who uh, have no self control. So please lead by example if you're blue. Um, Glenn Davies has contributed $2 Australian. He says, "Hey, stranger, still learning how to do this?" And Glenn, every day, every day. Andrew Dorset's contributed $5 New Zealand. He says, "Another donation for the community. Keep up the great work, Uncle Carey." All right, thank you, Andrew. Thanks to all of you. Um, Someone's telling me it's Mark Stevens is timing people out. So I'm going to ask Mark Stevens to stop timing people out, regardless of why you're doing it. Please do not do it anymore. If somebody is misbehaving, please bring it to my attention. You can write it numerous times in the chat until I see it. There are lots of other people in blue. It is not your job. I understand you believe you're looking out for my best interest, but you're also causing harm and you're upsetting people. If you start upsetting people, you're going to lose your blue status, whether you think it's right or it's wrong. As a community, we all have to be together and understand that there are consequences to any actions that result in banning or timing out a viewer, which could potentially be a future subscriber or even a future blue moderator. So allow me to be the judge of that. And please, if you're looking out for my best interest, then just let me know what's happening. If it continues, despite my asking you to stop, then you will leave me little choice than to remove that power from you. So I don't have to worry about you anymore doing that. So I'm trusting you, if you're blue, to look out for me, not to look out for mysterious rules or judgments. You allow me to make those rules and judgments. That's my decision. And and that we build a good, strong community here, where everybody is given a fair shot, not decided by some random person in blue, right? Give me the benefit of deciding that, please. And I won't ask you again. So if it happens again, I'm just, obviously, it's too much power in your hands and you can't handle it, and that's fine. We'll just remove it. But I appreciate that I think you're doing things for the right reason, and I'm asking you to stop. I'm just looking through the chat to see what I've missed here. A couple other contributions have come in. David Kelly Parent with a $5 Canadian contribution. Bebo's contributed $2. Thanks to both of you very much. We have 1,438 viewers right now, so maybe I should get back to work, huh? Let me grab the other camera and show you what I've got going on here. What do I do with it? Here it is. All right, so bear with me. I really haven't done this before, so I'm going to just kind of play around with being my own cameraman and working somewhat one-handed. This could go horribly wrong. It probably will. All right, let's go to camera 3. Here we go. So this is the motherboard, the Gigabyte H370 HD3. We've got 4 sockets for RAM. Our CPU socket is covered. We've got our M.2 socket here for our solid state storage right there. We've got another socket down here for a small Wi-Fi, like a laptop style Wi-Fi card. We can add Wi-Fi to this board either through this little card or through an add-in card through one of these slots or through the USB ports. There's lots of different ways we can add Wi-Fi to this board. This is a little battery that retains your BIOS settings, date, and time that usually needs to be changed out about every 5 or 6 years. And then we've got one more M.2 slot that runs, I believe, at half speed right down here. So we're going to use the one up at the top because that's full speed HDMI NVMe slot for our solid state storage. As we scroll down and look at the connectors on the board, you'll see we've got the front audio connector. You'll hear me talk about these connectors when the motherboard is mounted in the case and you can't see in there. So this is a good time for me to get those close-up shots. And you'll see on the front audio connector that there's a little pin missing. You got to look really carefully. Maybe I can zoom it without blur. Maybe I can't. So at the bottom row, right down here, you'll see that there's a pin missing right there. And that's ensuring that the connector can only go on in one direction, because the connector is going to have a hole blocked and it's got to meet where there's no pin or it won't go on. Then we've got a serial port connection here labeled just COM. Why we have an LPT port, that's an old school printer port from back in the 90s. Never really realized that. I just ignore these things I don't use. Next to that, we've got a fan header for a system fan, case fan. And then we've got two USB external plugs for two external USB 2 devices, maybe a memory card reader or a USB 2 adapter to plug in to add more USB ports to the back of the case. That is one of the mounting holes to the board. This connector here is the Trusted Platform Module, or TPM, which I don't use. It's a security thing. And then this multicolored connector, it's always in the bottom right corner on these boards, right down here. This is the front panel header, and that's where your power LED, hard drive LED, power switch, and reset switch all go on the first 4 pins on the top and bottom rows. And you'll see the colors are horizontal, they're not vertical. So the blue one, for example, that represents the hard drive LED. So the positive cable is going to go closest to the edge, and then the negative cable next to that. And then above it, you'll see it's green. That's where the power LED goes. Again, positive cable on the left, negative cable on the right. Beside that, these next 2 pins in orange, that is your power switch. And then directly below on the next 2 pins in green, that is your reset switch. All these other connectors from here over, basically, this is all I'm looking at when I'm building. I'm just looking at those 4 pins on the top and 4 pins on the bottom. A total of 8 pins. Each wire takes 2 pins. It represents 4 wires. Hard drive LED, power switch, reset switch. It's really that easy. As we look across the board, you'll see we've got a couple SATA connectors here for external storage, 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch drives. Also along the side, we've got 4 more SATA data connectors there for a total of up to 6 drives. But be aware that when we utilize the M.2 drive, it may consume a couple of these in the process. So you'll read your documentation for details on that. It varies via chipset. Continuing up this side of the board, we've got our USB 3 header right here. And then our main motherboard power connector is here. This white fan connector is for the CPU fan. And then as we go across the top, there's our 8-pin CPU power connector, another mounting hole, and there's also a fan header right there. Kind of hard to see it. I usually hook up the rear case fan there. The back of this motherboard, using the built-in video built into the CPU, gives us, what kind of output do we have? We have VGA right here, DVI, and HDMI. And I believe you can use all 3 of those, if I'm not mistaken. Here on the edge, we've got 2 USB 2s along with a PS2 keyboard or mouse plug, old school style. 2 USB 3s with, again, the HDMI port I mentioned previously. 2 more, these are USB, I believe, 3.2 with a Type C connector and a Type A connector. 2 more USB 3s with built-in gigabit Ethernet, and then 7.1 surround audio. The green plug is your speaker output. If you just have a traditional left and right speaker, it's always the green plug you're after. The red plug is traditionally used for a microphone. Okay, that's pretty much all the plugs on the motherboard, and I like how expandable this motherboard is. I like how many slots we've got here to work with. Like I said, if you wanted to turn this into a gaming computer, you easily could by just adding any graphics card you wanted. You can add a $200 graphics card, you could add a $5,000 graphics card. The make and model of the board are often printed right onto the board. And if you look closely below all of the connectors, written in very fine print, it explains what everything is, which is why I often don't have to read a manual. Even this switch, or this connector, will tell us where the switches and hard drive and power LEDs go. If you have enough light and sharp enough vision, and if my camera will focus on it, you can see the etchings on the board explaining what is above it, and it's broken into little sections. Times like this, I wish I had a camera with a manual focus on it, but I'll make do with what I got. I don't ordinarily get the opportunity to give you these kind of extreme close-ups, but do know that when I have this mounted into the case and I'm telling you I'm hooking up the power LED or the reset switch, that you remember this is the close-up of what I'm working on, and I'm working only on those top 4 and bottom 4 pins only. I'm ignoring the rest of this connector, and I'll do that on every build you ever see. All right, so that gives you a pretty good overview. Now for the CPU here, I've got the Core i7-9700K. It's a pretty thin box because there's no cooler included, which is why we're going to add this $49 Mugen 5 cooler, which you've seen me use a lot of. And that pretty much preps the board, right? With the CPU, the cooler, the RAM, and the storage. I'm only going to prep the cooler. I'm not going to install it because it interferes with my access to these plugs right up in this corner up here. So we'll get the CPU installed, the M.2 storage installed. I'll leave the RAM out for now, and I'll get the cooler mounting mechanism put in, but leave the heatsink off. And then we're ready to put the motherboard into the case. Once again, looking into the case, you'll see we have a number of standoffs already installed here. There's a couple right up here. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here. This motherboard isn't going to quite be this wide, but we do want to make sure that these little standoffs, these metal posts that poke out from the case, they cannot hit the back of the motherboard. They've got to align with holes in the motherboard. And again, building a computer is very easy as long as you pay attention to these little details. These little holes are placed so that you can move the standoffs for different motherboard designs. That's why it's important you're not substituting parts if you're following along for the first time, or you could have fitment issues that require you to move the standoffs around. If you build exactly what I'm building, then you won't have to worry about that. So again, something that may be no big deal for an experienced builder could throw you completely if you've never built before and didn't even know what a standoff was or what these holes were for. And then finally, here's a close-up of the 4 drive bays. Again, 4 3.5-inch drives will fit in there, and these little latches that lock into place to make it completely toolless. And then above it in this direction, there are 4 quadrants, each one 2.5 inches wide, so you can slide up to 4 2.5-inch solid state or even mechanical laptop drives in there, really intended for solid state. The case includes a front fan as well as a rear fan that comes included with the price. And then up here at the front of the case, we get these extreme close-ups. We've got 2 more front USB 3.0s, headphone jack, microphone jack, reset switch, hard drive LED, and then power switch and power LED are right here. And that is all your close-ups. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I'm going to set this down. Michael Danes contributed $10. He says, here for your supply of Coca-Cola for Carey and cookies for your furry kids. And you can see they're starting to appear because it's a little after 5 o'clock and they know that that's dinner time. So let me feed these guys before we go much further and we can entertain ourselves for a minute here while they enjoy food so much. You think they never ate before. What do you think, Lyle? Are you hungry? I guess that's a yes. If only I knew where the food was. Where do I keep the food? Is it right in front of where you're standing? Is Timmy stuck in the well? What are you trying to tell me, boy? I'm starving. Give me some food. His dog's tail. What are you saying? Are you saying it's time to eat? I don't understand your tail. It's just too fluffy. Look at that thing. Are you part peacock and goat based on your sideways ear? Yeah? Enough talking, more eating? All right, whatever you want. Dinner? Mmm. Here you go, Jimmy. You ready? Here you go. Good boy. Don't look at me when I'm eating. All right. Got to take care of some important business there. Welcome in. 1,452 people are watching live. Welcome in, folks. And I'm going to start prepping the board, which is going to require me moving this camera a little bit so you can get a better view. Let me just move some stuff out of my way here. All right, hold on to your lunch because we're going to get a little motion sickness for a moment as I reposition the camera. Let's see. All right, now these Gigabyte boards, I don't know why Gigabyte adds this extra mounting hole right here. It drives me crazy. But I have these little plastic standoffs we used to use on motherboard mounting back in the 90s. And since I've got them, I use them. For the rest of you, you just won't use this hole. You'll leave it empty. And I just plug that in right there. And it's just a little plastic standoff that adds a little extra support. Again, other motherboard manufacturers who make boards of this size don't have that mounting hole, nor does Corsair make a case that has a place for this mounting. It's something only Gigabyte does. I don't know why. You just will typically ignore it and you'll use all the other mounting holes. You'll see there's no other mounting holes in line. See how these three line up and these three line up? Well, that one's a little offset, but that one's just unique all on its own for some weird reason. I don't understand why this part would be more likely to sag than down here or up here. You'd think if it was necessary there, it'd be necessary to have it equally spaced. But again, Gigabyte does some weird things, but they make a good product, so I'm not going to, say I'm not going to buy the product because that's a weird thing. And again, the standoff is not required. It's just something I have, and it's one way for me to get rid of them and feel like I'm recycling. John Yasuda, welcome in, John. Good to see you, my friend. He just contributed $20. He goes, man, now I want some chips from your home state. Great job as usual, Carey. Keep up the great work. Hey, thank you, John. Thanks for all of your support, of course. And yeah, bettermade.com, I think or bettermadesnackfoods.com. Bettermadesnackfoods.com. They're out of, they're made in Detroit, Michigan. And like I said, for me, it's a taste of home. So there's an emotional connection there. But they have a special going on with that little party bag or party box. So it's about $30, I think. Most of that is the cost of shipping. It's totally worth it, though. You only live once. And the dogs, they want a cookie. So let's handle that real quick. You want a cookie? Yeah, is it cookie time? Is it cookie time? There's a cookie. Do you want a cookie? You're such a good boy. You're such a good boy. All right. These dogs really have an addiction to those things. Can't be healthy, but they're happy. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the CPU in here. So here is the brand new CPU. It's never ever been opened. Like I said, everything's live and unscripted. Flip open the knife. There's our documentation and a Go Faster sticker you could put on your case. That'll make your computer run faster. If you believe that, I have a bridge in New York to sell you. We'll just bend these little pieces of cardboard back, lift up, take this out, set this gently over there. Oh, sorry, Lyle. And then we'll bring around the edges. You'll see there's cutouts, again, to hold the parts by the edges. As long as you hold your components by edges, you don't have to fear the anti-static ghost. And then we're going to push down on this lever and pull it away and up, which exposes this delicate socket. It is very delicate. In one corner, there's a small triangle. It's right here. In one corner of this chip, there is also a small triangle. Can you see it? Do you see the small triangle? I will give you a clue. You want a bigger clue? Can you see it now? No, maybe not. All right. So the triangles line up. And so what I do is I line up the two corners, and I'm kind of putting some pressure against the plastic lip. But I'm not pushing down. I'm pushing towards you guys, just very gently, so that when I let the chip go, it should gently fall into the socket. If it's not in the socket straight, it'll wiggle about, so I can kind of grab it and see if it twists. If it does not twist, that verifies to me it's in the socket correctly. I'm going to lower the lid back down. It goes underneath this one little screw right here. And when I push this lever down, it's going to have a lot of resistance. You're going to have to use some muscle. When I push this down and latch it back under here, that lid, this little plastic cover, is going to pop up all by itself. So I'm going to put my hand right on top here. Again, I'm just touching plastic. I don't want the board to move on me because I got to put a lot of pressure now and push this lever down and lock it down. And this piece has to cover those pins if we ever take the CPU out, like if we had to send the motherboard back to the manufacturer. Without this piece, the motherboard manufacturer won't honor your warranty. And you don't want to send your motherboard back to the manufacturer with your chip and RAM or solid state drive installed, because there's a good chance you will not get them back. So I always put this little cover in the motherboard box with the spare parts in the unlikely event the customer would have to send the system, the board back for any reason. Now I can put the M.2 drive in, and again, this is currently my favorite value bang for the buck. This 2 terabyte XPG SX8100 from AData. Once again, unscripted and live. None of these parts have ever been used. There's no rehearsal. So when people ask, how often do I get dead on arrival parts? Well, you tell me. You're watching the videos live. How often do you see parts dead? It's pretty rare. So here is the package. There's nothing else in the box. No documentation, nothing. Put that over there. This is like a little heat spreader. It's got some tape on it. We can stick to the top. Do that here in a minute. Once again, you'll see these cutouts in the plastic. That's for your fingers to get in there. take the drive out. Don't bend the drive out of the plastic. Rather, bend the plastic from around the drive. Okay. And then as soon as possible, grab it by the edges. You see I had to sort of hold it at the top, hold it by the tops of the chips, try to avoid making contact with any of the silver or gold points. Now, that's going to go right here into this socket. But first, there's a screw, a very small screw here that's got to come out. And for most of my build, I'm using a Phillips number 2, a screwdriver. But for this part, it helps to have a JIS screwdriver. This one's from a company called Hosen, or Hosan, and it's available at my Amazon store as a whole kit of these with the Japanese industry standard, or JIS drivers. If I can get the camera to focus, there it is. And I was able to buy just this driver without buying the kit, but lately I've not seen it available on Amazon anymore. I've only seen the kit. But the kit's not very expensive, and if you're going to be doing a lot of building, especially with laptops and parts that utilize these really small screws, this tool can make an amazing difference in whether or not the job is easy or difficult. So I'm going to just remove the screw that's in place. Now, Asus and ASRock packaged this little standoff right down here and this little screw in separate little bags in the motherboard box, which I hate. This, in my opinion, is how all motherboard manufacturers should ship, with the standoff and screws already mounted on the board, so you don't have to go looking for them, and it's less wasteful with little plastic bags, each one containing one little piece. So if this were an Asus or an ASRock board, there would be 6 little tiny plastic bags, one each for the standoff and one each for each screw, which is stupid. So with this silver piece facing up, you'll see there's a notch. It's going to be facing my right. That's going to align to this socket, and I'm just going to push it in there until I can't see those little gold fingers anymore, and that's it. Now you'll see it kind of reminds me of a diving board, kind of backwards though, right? And all this little screw does that we just removed, it goes right back where we took it from, and it just holds that drive down. It doesn't have to be super tight, just snug it up. And if we want to, we can add this little very thin plate. It's designed, I think, mostly for looks. It's supposed to help dissipate heat. So we'll just peel the sticker, the backing off of it. You'll see there's a little groove right here that's supposed to align with where the screw is. And we can just set that on there very gently at first, trying to center it. And once you feel like you got it pretty well aligned, then you can just push down on it. It's okay for the board to flex. Circuit boards made today can flex quite a bit. So it's mostly aesthetics, but it does supposedly help with dissipating heat. I don't know, it probably doesn't make that big of a difference. Now, I'm done with this driver, so I'll put it away. And I can start to prep the cooler. Now, you guys, if you're a regular to this channel, you've seen me utilize the Scythe Mugen 5 on probably 40 or 50 different builds. I don't think there's a better cooler for the money. This sells for $48.99 on Amazon. It's the regular price, and it fits darn near any socket type available on a modern motherboard, with the only exception I can think of being Threadripper. I don't know if the new socket 1200 boards from Intel will be supported by this. I don't know yet. But if you're the same location of holes, then obviously it'll work. But in the meantime, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Inside of the box, if I bring this over here where you can see it, not only do you get a cooler for $48.99, but you get this pretty nice screwdriver in this box right here. Right on top is this white box, and in this white box, there's this pretty nice screwdriver, which you can use around the house for all kinds of different projects after the fact. These companies like Noctua, they have this cult-like following, and yet they give you the crappiest little throwaway Allen wrench tools and charge you a premium price when you can pay less to get a cooler that's much easier to install. It comes with an actual real tool that you can use in real life instead of this one-time Allen wrench nonsense that's difficult to get any leverage on. It's very uncomfortable to the hands. There's our documentation. It covers all the different socket types. And then finally in the box, we've got this bag filled with parts. Now these are going to be numerous parts we don't need because, for example, there's parts for mounting to an AMD CPU. We don't have an AMD CPU on this build, so we won't be using those parts. So there'll be a number of parts here that we're going to put away and give to the owner of the computer in case they decide to change the cooler and put it in something else, or maybe they upgrade to an AMD system, or maybe they downgrade to an AMD system, right? Whatever. So I'm going to dump these parts out and I'm going to show you. Here's our thermal compound. Some companies just give you a little plastic baggie of thermal compound. They're cheap to do that. And they charge more money for their coolers. I don't know what they're thinking. I like how Scythe gives you more than enough thermal compound. There's probably enough in this tube to do this 3 times. These straight brackets are for Intel, so we're going to need those today. These curved brackets right here, these are for AMD. We're not using these on this build, so those will get put away in a separate little Ziploc bag. 2 of these little metal hangers are going to hold the fan on. These other 2 are for adding an additional fan optionally to the other side of the heatsink. This cooler works so well, I've never needed to add another fan. This metal backplate is for mounting on Intel systems, so we're going to need that. If we were using AMD, we would not use this plate. This is also all AMD mounting hardware, so we don't need this whole bag. Finally, there's this little bag of standoffs. And you'll see there are some large ones and some little ones here. It's kind of hard for the camera to pick that up. But these little ones are used for the socket 299, X99 and X299 Intels. So we aren't building with that. So all 4 of those can go, which leaves us just these parts remain. Just like that. And then that's all the mounting hardware we need for a socket 1151 Intel chip like what we're doing today. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, we'll put these standoffs back in this little baggie, and I will grab another Ziploc bag. And to avoid any confusion for the customer, what I do is I take the cooler instructions and put those in a Ziploc bag. And then all these spare parts will go in, and then the customer can go, oh, well, that's the cooler instructions. Those must be the spare cooler parts. So they're not just randomly floating around in the box with the motherboard case. I mean, the computer case and motherboard cables and stuff, which will be all in this empty box when I'm done. So that's all the parts we're not using. All that remains in this box now is the fan itself, and of course the cooler, the heatsink itself, which is in here. That's all that's there. And we'll set that aside for now. And then this guy, Lyle, this guy's got a thing for boxes. Do you want this box? Where are you going with that? Can I have it? Here, let me take this out. Boy, you want it? You want this? You want this box? Come here. Come here. He's looking at me like. I'm just going to put it there for now. I need that shredded so I can put it in the trash later, in the recycle bin. All right, he's not cooperating today. Usually it helps if I just don't pay him any attention, and then he starts hamming it up. Okay, so to prep for this cooler to go on to the board, I need this back plate. You'll see the back plate has some foam pads on one side. Those foam pads are going to go up against the circuit board. We don't want the metal to get up against the circuit board because that could short it out. And you'll see there are 2 holes nowhere else, just right here. And that's going to align with the two screws. See, there's two screws right up there. Those two holes are going to align with, again, the foam facing the back of the circuit board here, right up against the board. And we want to turn the standoffs through there's three holes in each corner. There are three holes. And for this motherboard socket, 1151, we're going to use the hole in the middle on each one of these corners. So I'm going to align that and hold it there with one hand. And again, notice how I'm holding the board. You'll see I don't touch any of the components. I hold by edges only. I'm going to grab one of the standoffs here, and I can pick any corner, and putting the first one in is the most difficult because you've got to align it and make sure that it's going to align with this middle hole here, which it is doing. And I'm just going to give it a couple of turns. I don't want to turn it too far. That looks like a pretty good start to me. And then we'll do another standoff, go to the exact opposite corner. We're going to go right down here and make sure that that aligns with the center hole. I apologize if my hands are in the way there, but my buddy Mitch Morrison is not here to film for me yet, but we hope to be returning to normal here before too long. What I'm trying to do is, the screw seems to be a little bit tough going in. Now, the remaining two screws I've got to install, the remaining one here and one there, should automatically align with the right holes on that back plate, because now the back plate is aligned because we put those two in. So these two then become aligned automatically as a result. And once we've got them all started, now we can use the included screwdriver that came with the cooler and go ahead and tighten these down. And I would tighten down opposite corners to avoid any warpage to the back plate. We want to make sure that back plate is secured evenly on all sides. So we're just going to rotate around like this in opposite directions, sort of like putting the tire on a car. And these will go on pretty tightly. And they should get to a point where they just don't want to turn anymore. If you over tighten, you'll hear the motherboard crack. If you hear the motherboard crack, that's not good. But you do want to put a bit of force in there until they reasonably won't turn. Perfect. Now these little brackets, they're going to go on with the bump facing up. And you see this lever that we used earlier? We're going to put it right over that lever. And you'll also notice there's these elongated holes. And we're going to use the furthest hole closest to this edge in order for it to align properly. And we use these screws that were with the standoffs to secure this bracket down on top of those standoffs. Now, I do recommend you use a manual driver. You can use scythes included screwdriver for this. As a professional and impatient builder, I will use my electronic driver to just get this job done a little quicker. This one will go on the exact opposite side, facing each other. And we'll use the last two remaining screws. So that's prepped and ready for the cooler. All that's going to happen now, when we apply thermal compound, you'll see there's two screws on the bottom of this cooler, and they're going to go right into those two center posts, and it's going to lock down right on top of that. Super easy third-party cooler install. Now, we still have RAM to install. However, I don't want to put the RAM in yet. It's just a matter of these gray sockets. There's two black sockets and two gray sockets on this motherboard. And we're going to use these gray ones. If we're only using 2 sticks of RAM, hold on, let me get the camera situated. We're only using 2 sticks of RAM, so if you read your documentation, you would see that it says to utilize dim sockets 1 and 2 first. And dim socket 1 and 2 are the gray channels. So we're going to use the gray channel here and the gray channel there. Obviously, if you're using 4 memory sockets, four memory sticks, then you'll use all 4 sockets, and the order won't matter. But the reason there are 2 different colors is each one represents a channel. So for dual channel memory to work efficiently and properly, you skip a socket basically. So that's Gigabyte helps you with that by altering one channel is gray and the other channel is black. If you're only using 2 memory sticks as we are, then we will use the gray ones. This is that big motherboard power connector. We're going to be putting that on here in a moment after we mount the board into the case. And then soon thereafter, we'll be able to power it on after we do everything I just mentioned. So let me address getting the motherboard into the case. And so for this, I'm going to move the camera back. So bear with me for a minute as we go for a little ride. And I hopefully don't knock anything over. Nearly there. Hold on. We're getting there. I have to move my portable Mitch. Because I can have Mitch walk around with the camera, but since I don't have Mitch here, I have my tripod, which is like a portable Mitch. Is this up? And it looks like I've missed a few contributions. Let me give some shouts out to these generous folks. Let's see, what have I missed? Yum Maker has contributed $3. Carney Zoll has contributed $1, and Paul Ware has contributed $10. Thanks to all of you for contributing and being a part of this amazing community. We have 1,652 people watching live around the world right now. Why don't you give me a shout out and tell me where you're watching me from? I think it's kind of fun to see where people all over the world are watching this guy talk to himself in his kitchen. I know there's people from Brazil and Colombia, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, which of course includes Wales, Scotland, Ireland. Give me shout out where you're from. Please let me know where you're from. Saudi Arabia, Minnesota. We don't talk like that in Minnesota. Of course you don't. I was looking to see if Mitch was still in there somewhere. I don't see him. Here we go. All there: Armenia, Illinois, Florida, North Carolina, New York, Tennessee and Ohio, Wisconsin and Oregon and Texas and Poland, as well as Northern Ontario, Canada, New York City, Switzerland and Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Netherlands. What else? Slovakia, Washington, Michigan, Costa Rica, Hawaii and Portugal, as well as Wales, Columbus, Ohio, the Philippines, Quebec. We've got people watching from more from Tennessee, more from Oregon, Brooklyn, New York, more from the Netherlands, Ohio, Oregon, Florida, Birmingham, England, Iraq, New York City, Puerto Rico, Seattle, Washington, more from Michigan, Australia, Sunderland in the UK, St. Lucia in the West Indies, Oldham in the UK, Philippines, South Africa, Taree, New South Wales, Australia, Quebec, Melbourne, Barbados, Knoxville, Tennessee, Maine, Las Vegas, Flint, Michigan, San Diego, Malta, Malaysia, Bristol in the UK, Macedonia, North Carolina, right on, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Auckland, New Zealand, Somerset in the UK, upstate New York, Milton Keynes in the UK, Portland, Oregon, Scotland. He says it's 1:35 in the morning in Scotland. Lance joins us from Cape Town, South Africa. Rossum is in Aberdeen, Scotland. James is joining us from Flint, Michigan. Don Dixon joins us from Saskatchewan, Canada. Mark says, don't forget Glendale, Arizona. Yeah, we definitely can't forget Glendale, Arizona. Bob Shoemaker joins us from Sun City West. Ed Miller's in Dorset in the UK. We've got more people from Pennsylvania, Canada. Oh, Denver, Colorado in the house. Fresno, California. Titusville, Florida. Fort Smith in the UK. Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. There's a lot of syllables in that one. St. Louis, Missouri, joining us, the gateway to the West. And let's see, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Hastings in the UK, Connecticut, Manchester in the UK, New Hampshire, Romania, Lancaster, California, more from Canada, Liverpool, Roanoke, Virginia. Gary says greetings from Chihuahua, Mexico. Right on, guys. Thank you so much. Why does Carey say the cooler is only $48? Because the cooler is $48. If you click on the links in the video notes below this video, they'll take you directly to Amazon. The cooler should be on Amazon for $48.99 in the United States. I don't know what it sells for in other countries because I don't live in other countries. So given that I'm from the United States, I'm broadcasting from the United States, and I'm buying my parts in the United States, all of my points of reference are the United States. So I don't know how much it is outside of the US because there's other tariffs and other fees involved with regards to the governments, individual countries' governments, and how they mandate that. Slavy Boys joining us from Bulgaria, right on. So thank you guys so much for shouting out where you're from. That means a lot to me. 1,611 people are watching. If you're enjoying the content, less than a quarter of you so far have hit that like button. There's a thumbs up. If you click on that, it gives me a like. It's nice if you do. If you feel like you want to be nice. And then, of course, if you've not subscribed to me, if you want to see other times when I'm posting new content and live content, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to make sure that notifications are turned on. Once again, click subscribe and then click the little bell and turn notifications on. Doesn't do you much good to subscribe and not be notified. Sometimes notifications don't work well unless you have a Gmail account. Gmail accounts are free to create and you never have to use it. You can set it up one time, direct your YouTube account to notify you through Gmail, and then forward all of your Gmail to whatever email you normally use. You can also tie it into your cellular phone, so it'll alert you that way, which is a little bit more convenient than email. So there are videos for people that say, hey, I can't get my notifications to work. There are already numerous videos from other YouTube content creators explaining all the little reasons why notifications may work. And rather than recreate that wheel, just go to YouTube search and type in why are my notifications, how to fix notifications, or why am I not receiving notifications. And there are a number of videos, very well done, that can step you through all the different little details you have to check. For most of us, though, you just turn it on and it works. So to mount the motherboard into the case, I need to lay the case flat. trying to mount the motherboard with the case upright like this is great for a camera view, but not so good to actually get it done without damaging it. So at times like this, it's great to have Mitch around because Mitch is nice and tall and he can get that camera pointing straight down. But all I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to get this fan cable out of my way so I don't pinch it underneath the motherboard, this rear case fan right here. And if it's really in your way, if you're having a real hard time, it's just 4 screws. You can take the fan out super easy if you're having difficulty getting the motherboard installed. I've done this enough. It's pretty easy for me to work around it. I'm also too lazy to pull it out and put the fan back in again. So I'm going to grab the motherboard here by the edges once again with the I/O ports going towards the I/O shield, and I'm going to put it in with the I/O ports in first, kind of on an angle. And I'm just going to kind of set it in there right now. I'm just going to gently just place it down in there. And it's difficult for me to do this on camera because you pretty much have to look at my back the whole time. All I'm going to try and do is align the ports with these holes. And to do so, I hold the board, I try and grab an edge, and I'll hold by the I/O ports themselves and get it aligned so that those ports start to come through these holes, and to make sure that that little grounding strap I pointed out earlier isn't getting trapped underneath and folded down, which would cover up one of your ports. And it's often something you won't realize you did until you go to use it after you've completed building the system, which will then require you to dismantle the system to correct. So watch for that. Make sure that all of these holes are lined up correctly. And once they are, then push the board towards the back of the case. And one of the mounting holes will sit over the middle standoff, has a post, and the post will go through the mounting hole and hold the board in position so that you can use the rest of the mounting holes to use the included screws to secure the motherboard. It's that easy. So I'm going to push the board towards you, and then it sits down. Once it aligns with that center standoff, which has a post, that post goes right through there. It holds the board into position for us. And now it's just a matter of grabbing, I think it's 5 screws. And they don't have to be tightened in any order. You don't want to over tighten them, but you will make them snug. Once again, it's a good idea and recommended to use a manual screwdriver and turn it by hand to avoid any accidental cross threading. As a professional who's done this thousands of times, I will get away with using some power tools. If you're a first-time builder, I would like you to exercise caution. You should also not turn the screws until they are stopping like I'm doing. You should only start the screws. And the reason you shouldn't tighten them down is so that your board, the motherboard, can wiggle a little bit, because you might find, especially right up here in this top corner, that standoff doesn't quite align with the mounting hole, and you may have to shift the board a little forward or backward or up or down, and the board won't shift if you've tightened the screws. Now I'm feeling a little overconfident, so I'm letting the driver go ahead and tighten these screws all the way for me, and that one's not tightening because it's not aligned. So that means my confidence has gotten me, and I'm just going to back these screws off so they're not tight. But I do want them to be started into their holes so I don't have to worry about realigning them later. Now I should be able to wiggle the board just a little tiny bit. There, it moved quite significantly, and now that one went all the way through. So there's going to be 2 screws on the top, so that was 1. Here's the other one right next to the RAM. We've got 1 screw in the middle. Even though the middle has 3 holes, 1 I put the plastic standoff in, 1 the metal post that holds the board in position goes through, leaving just the 1 at the very end at the bottom of the I/O ports. And then there's just 2 at the bottom. 1 I've already started. This is the last one right there, and I can tighten down the last one there, and that installs the board properly. We won't be using any more of these screws, so they can be put away. Put the extra ones here in the bag. In fact, even these case screws, I don't want to lose them, so I'll put them in the motherboard box. Documentation for the case goes to the motherboard box. Spare parts for the cooler, motherboard box. CPU instructions, motherboard box, the plastic motherboard box, SATA cables for now, motherboard box, these screws, motherboard box. The customer will receive the computer assembled along with that motherboard box with all the spare parts. So it's as if the customer built it themselves. They're going to have all the same spare parts they would have had if they did it themselves. The only difference is I'm doing it for them. I'm not selling them a computer. I'm just building it for them. All right, so right now we've got 1,525 people watching right on, and we bumped up to 514 likes. So that's a third of you have clicked like. I guess that's pretty good, right? A third of you are considerate. I guess that's a pretty good ratio for today's world. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and remove these wire ties that are holding the front port umbilical cables and the power supply cables. This is a good time now to do our cabling. So motherboard power we can do first. You don't want any metal wire ties in your computer build when you're done, because when they age, they get brittle and they just fall apart. And then you've got a piece of metal floating around in your computer case. And if somebody were to bump the case, that metal could end up shorting something out. And it can be a very expensive lesson to learn. So if there's any wires that you want to wrap up and keep together, please use a nylon zip tie. Don't use metal. The metal is fine for the manufacturer to ship in, but not to have an operational computer in. I only mention it because it's been more than one occasion where that has actually created a repair scenario that was completely avoidable by just taking, a penny's worth of nylon zip ties and 20 seconds of your time to put this much time and effort into building something so nice, and to leave out, to be so lazy or so cheap, or both, to not replace these wire ties can have dire consequences in the future. It won't happen anytime soon, but when it happens, you will have completely forgotten about it. And then it may strike you what I said years earlier. You'll say, oh, yeah, it got brittle, it broke, it shorted out, now I need a new motherboard, or I need a new drive, or maybe it falls in your power supply, and it's bad juju when that happens, trust me. So take all the metal out. So these are all the front port umbilicals. That's our power switch, power LED, hard drive LED, reset switch, USB cable, front port audio. That's all that is, just this stuff right there. This is a good time for me to get to that 8-pin CPU power connector right up there on the corner. It's hard to reach. Also, the CPU, the rear case fan, there's a plug way up there. And it's super easy for me to get to that right now. So since I can only do one thing at a time, I'm going to start with that 8-pin CPU power connector. Right here it says CPU. There's two 4-pin connectors. We're going to push those together. That makes an 8-pin connector. And I could just plug it right on there, but the cabling looks like crap if I do that. So instead, I'm going to route the cable. I'm going to get it right through this little pocket. There's a little pocket right here. Now, most power supplies will cover that hole entirely, in which case I'll use this hole. But because this power supply is a little more shallow, I can get away with hiding the cabling just a little bit better. So just push that right through. And we'll bring this around and pull it through this way. I'll make sure I've got all the slack out of that. So what's happening is this is running up against these two cables, so I'm going to route these cables around the other side of it now before I run the cable entirely. And this will make my cable management just a little bit easier, which I won't do to the very last stage, to make sure everything's working. Nothing worse than doing a really nice cable management job only to have to take it apart because your build doesn't work and you have to disassemble things. So make sure your build is 100% functional, then make it look pretty. But these are the basic steps in the initial cabling that can help making it look pretty take a little less time because we're doing half of the work now. We're just not going to do 100% of that until we know it's fully functioning. So that cable comes up through a hole in the top. We're going to push the two connectors together with the clip facing the outside edge, and that's going to go onto that top connector. Push it straight on. It should click. You should hear it. And we'll give it a slight tug. Make sure that the cable doesn't fall out. If the cable falls out, you didn't have it in all the way. That's how that works. Don Dixon just contributed 20 Canadian dollars. Hey, Don, thank you for supporting the channel. This giant connector, this is the motherboard main power connector. And again, we could just plug it straight on there, but it'll look terrible. If we want it to look good, we'll run it through this hole here in the case, and then we'll bring it up through this top hole up here, like that. Once again, we're going to push the two connectors together to make one large connector, and the clip will again face the outside edge. There is no other plug that looks like this. It only goes on in one direction. You cannot get it wrong. Once you get it aligned, once you get the plug aligned with the socket, and it's kind, you can see it's seating in, then you can add a little force until you hear it click. Again, the board is designed to flex a bit, so don't worry about flexing your motherboard. It's fine. Flexing is okay. Put your money away. Not that kind of flexing. All right. So that looks good. I can go ahead and take care of this rear case fan because it goes way up in the corner. And if I put that giant heatsink on right now, I won't be able to reach anything in this corner. It's sort of the downside of using that heatsink with this case is it's a tight fit, and the order of events can make your life easier or harder. But this cable's already wrapped, but it's got that darn wire tie, which I don't want. So I'm going to replace that wire tie with just a nylon zip tie, and I'll use the ones that came with the case. And I'm going to use two. I'm going to put one up on one end to help keep that look nice and tidy. And then I'll grab another one, which I have. Here's one over here. I'll put it here at the opposite end. And I can take this wire tie off of here and throw it away. That looks good. And then I'll cut the little pigtails off of there. I got some wire cutters with a flat edge. You want to be very careful you don't cut through the wire. So this is a little cable management I do now because it'll be impossible to do once the heat sink's on. But for the most part, don't worry about making all your cables look pretty yet until you know the system is fully functional. Right up here in the very top, there's a 4-pin fan header. And this is only a 3-pin fan. So the way you know which 3 pins it goes on, and there's a little tab and some grooves that only fits in one direction, and it only fits over 3 of those 4 pins. That's how you know which pins it goes on. It won't sit flush any other way. And then we can just kind of push the cable up and out of the way. And look how clean it looks. We've already got 3 cables run, and you really can only see just this one, and you only see a couple inches of it. So that's the idea, to make it look pretty. It also makes it easier to work on later if you have to upgrade or repair it. That you don't have a tangle of cables all knotted up like some old Christmas tree lights you pulled out of the garage. That takes you longer to untangle than it does to wrap around the tree. So I do that for my own sanity. Now, you'll notice I haven't touched the top of the CPU at all. That's because the top of the CPU has an internal heat spreader, or an IHS. That CPU gets hot quick. And so to help dissipate the heat, we've got this giant radiator. And it's just going to allow air to flow actively, meaning passive would mean there's no fan. It would just sit there and it would passively allow the heat to dissipate. With active cooling, we've got a fan that's forcing air through these fins, and so the heat rises. The heat's going to go through these pipes, and through these fins, the air is going to blow, and it's going to blow the heat, uh, push the heat out, and we're going to push it out towards the back of the case. So we're going to make sure the fan that we attach on here is facing the same direction, is rotating in the same direction, and all the airflow is moving in the same direction. And before I mount this, I need to put some thermal compound down. Now that thermal compound is going to help us transfer the heat from one surface to another surface. Neither of these surfaces is perfect. They have microscopic little nooks and crannies and scratches and things you can't see with the naked eye. Maybe you can. Regardless, it's not the end of the world. That's what the thermal compound is for. Now, it doesn't really matter how you apply your thermal compound. There's a lot of people on the internet that have an illness with this regards to their thermal compound application. And I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm not here to tell you anything other than to share with you how a person that's been doing this for 29 years has learned through experience, a lot of experience, a way that works for me and keeps me in business. Okay. Now, if you see value in that, that's great. And if you don't, that's great too. It affects my business zero. So it's interesting to me that when I share my experience with some people, they want to give me their opinion on it, but their opinion doesn't pay my bills. So I don't really care. If you want to apply your thermal compound in some other method that involves waving chicken bones over your head and chanting to several gods, don't let me get in your way. In the meantime, I'm running a business and I'm simply sharing with you how I do it. And you may see that as beneficial, and you may see it as completely wrong. In either case, I get paid the same. So I'm going to grab the thermal compound here, and I'm going to apply. In fact, let me get you a zoom in so you can see closer how I'm going to do this. I've got a nitrile glove here, not a rubber glove and not a latex glove, nitrile glove. And I'm going to apply a little bit of thermal compound here, about the size of a pea, I guess, maybe a little less than a pea. Kind of like that. It's pretty good. And you'll see I barely use the thermal compound that's in this tube. There's plenty there for future application. And I'll put the lid back on it, and this will go back in the spare parts of the Ziploc bag with the other cooler parts. Using one of the clean fingers on the glove here, I'm going to just finger paint my thermal compound down to ensure that I've got full and even coverage. I need to see that. I can't just trust it. I can't just put a dab on there and assume that it's going to spread out evenly, or that I've not put too much on it. It oozes out the sides. This stuff is really hard to clean up. I then tap on it to make it tacky, and what that does is it raises little hills and valleys to avoid any sort of bubbles, air bubbles, things like that that could potentially happen, even though they really wouldn't make any difference in cooling except to the most extreme overclocker with perhaps liquid nitrogen cooling. So those are the people, a lot of the people that are making these videos online are these extremists that don't really apply to the average home user or average computer owner. So what I'm showing you is more practical with reality, also more budget friendly and more likely to actually impact you as an individual versus those extremists. Now, I'm going to go ahead and remove this glove, and I've kept my hands clean from the thermal compound, which gets messy. And on the bottom of the heatsink, they have protected it with this little plastic cover right here. And that's to keep the surface free of any contamination, whether that's dust, dirt, debris, even oils from your skin. So you leave this plastic on until it's time to install. Because it's time to install, I can remove that plastic now. This cooler has one screw that's kind of under the cooler, as you can see right here. And then there's a screw that sticks out. Let's see if I can turn this where you can see it. This screw sticks out. The side that sticks out goes towards your RAM because your fan's going to fit right there. And there's a cutout on the other side right over here. Where is it? Can't see. Right here. See this cutout? That's for motherboards that have RAM sockets on the other side, and it gives you a little extra room for tall RAM. It's a very well thought out cooler. I can't emphasize how impressed I am by Scythe's design here. Now let me back the camera back off because what I have to do is lay the case flat again. Then I'm going to turn the cooler so that the screw that sticks out faces the RAM sockets, and this is going to sit gently on top of our CPU. I'm going to grab the enclosed or included Phillips number 2 driver that Scythe gives you with the cooler, and I'm going to start, just give it a couple of turns on one screw. Then we're going to go in through the hole on top of the heatsink. That's going to align us with that screw that's underneath, and we'll give that one a couple of turns and start it. And this one I didn't start well enough because it just came right back out. So we don't want to turn it too much, because if you turn it too much, you're going to end up with the bottom of the heatsink not sitting flush. It'll sit sort of sideways like this, and you can't see that with the naked eye. But when you run your system, you're going to say, wow, it's running really hot. I wonder why. It looks fine. Well, it's going to look fine. You can't see the warpage that you did because you tightened down one side before the other. So it's really important you try and tighten these screws down together. So for example, I'll go in through here and I'll just kind of, first I got to find the screw. There it is. And I'll give it a couple turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarter turns there. Then I'll go to the other side and I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'll do 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come to the other side. I don't know why I'm saying 6. That's just a random number I'm picking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, those are about quarter turns. And then that should level it off and keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come back over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, came to a dead stop now. Now we'll go to the other side and turn it till it comes to a dead stop. Right there. So we've evenly tightened both screws on both sides down, and that's what it looks like when it's installed correctly. There's no wiggle to it, there's no wobble, and there's a little bit of slack cable here that we'll take care of a little later, but essentially just requires us to pull on it, pull that slack, so that it looks nice and clean in there. Again, we can barely see any cables at all. That's a job well done. This thermal compound, as I mentioned, can go back in the Ziploc bag with the rest of the cooler parts that the customer gets. Now, there's a little more cabling we've got to do. It's all really simple. I guess I can go ahead and put the fan on the cooler now. Here's our fan and those little wire brackets I was showing you earlier. The fan is going to draw air in from this part here that spins. You see the logo spinning, but notice the logo doesn't spin on the other side. You'll also see the support brackets here. So this is the side air comes out of on every fan you've ever seen in even a box fan in your house will have support brackets on one side. That's the side generally, on most fans, that's the side the air comes out at. Now obviously a lot of house fans, you can flip them to run the opposite way. These computer fans only run in one direction. So in this case, this is the side that draws air in, pulls air in. This is the side that pushes the air out. You'll notice here, it's drawing air in here and pushing the air out the back of the case. We want this to be in the same direction. We want the cable, when we mount this on the heatsink, to be here on the bottom to run as close as we can to the motherboard to keep the cabling as hidden as possible. So with these two brackets, you'll see they've got just a little bend in them, and they're going to go right onto the two holes here on each side so that you end up with this little pull handle. We'll do the same thing to both sides. Now again, this is the time to take care of this little cable management issue, because once that's installed, you're going to have a hard time getting to it. So I can just leave it exactly the way the manufacturer has sent it and just replace that metal zip tie with the nylon zip tie that's included rather with the case, or hopefully you have some extras, because you're still going to need more than what the case manufacturer gives you. And I like to do both sides of it just to keep the cable tight so it doesn't have these big loops showing. Once again, this is optional. The other benefit to this is you don't have any opportunity for, during shipping or movement of the case, for the cable, the slack part of the cable to then interfere in the fan and prevent the fan from turning. I've seen that with a lot of home builds where they just didn't take a few extra moments to tie up the slack, and as a result, created a situation where their fan wasn't turning and the system's overheating. So that looks pretty good to me. And then I'll cut those little pigtails off. And this gray connector is where the CPU fan is going to plug in. It's a 4-pin fan header and a 4-pin fan plug, so those will line up just perfectly. There is a groove that fits right around so it can only install in one direction. Then what I want to do is cut out into the top of the heatsink. There's these little grooves, and the fan's going to sit in there perfectly. And I'm going to push the fan down as far down as it'll go. Basically, it hits the top mounting screw. And I'm pulling up on these little metal wire brackets that I've hung on the side. And now what I do is use my thumb, and I'm going to pull on that wire bracket, and it's going to bite right into the side. I don't know how well you can see that. Let's see if I can, well, I can't really do this without stay. See if I can give you a close-up on that. I'm going to keep that held up like so, and then I'm going to pull this or push it this way, and it's going to seat right in there. Watch. See that? And that locks that right into position. And those fans are both blowing, pulling air in this way and then out the back. All the airflow moving in the same direction for optimal airflow. The last few things we've got to hook up are just the front port switches, and we can fire this bad boy up and see if it runs. So the first thing we've got is this unique looking cable. This is USB 3, that's the 2 ports here. We can look and see where it's going to plug in on the board, which is right here. And we can say, well, we can come in through the top here and kind of go down a little bit, or we can come in from this middle hole, which I think makes more sense. This is just aesthetics. It's a judgment. You can't get it wrong. It's what looks best to you. I think it looks best to come in through this middle hole right here. And then there's a little notch, so it aligns in one direction only, and we'll plug it straight on. Sometimes you'll hear it click into place. That takes care of that one connector. The front audio, which is headphones and microphone, that's represented in this one cable that says audio on it, or it says HD audio. So looking at the back of the case, the HD audio connector on most desktop motherboards goes somewhere on this corner on the front of the board. So the cable management on this sucks. Basically, you've got to cross the entire board to get to it. With this power supply, however, we can kind of come in right through that little hole, which helps hide the cable. Because remember when I did my close-up earlier, I showed you that was down here. So this connector with the pin missing on the bottom will go down on this connector. And there's no clip or anything to hold it in. It just kind of is a friction fit. You push that in, and we'll push this slack cable back out towards the back. And once again, you can see the cabling still looking really nice and neat in there. Now, before I hook up the final front switches and panel LEDs, I want to put the RAM in. Once again, make sure that we're using the gray slots and ensure that the retention levers are in the open position. The RAM only goes in one direction. And you will align the RAM with the slot first. It should slide in nice and neat. Make sure that the little cutout in the RAM matches the notch in the socket. Then you can apply pressure to one side, and the other side, you'll hear it click. And repeat that process with the other gray socket. align it with the socket first, nice and gentle, and then pressure, click, click. That's 32 gigs of RAM I think we just plugged in right there. Then I'll close the other retention levers just to make it look pretty. Now, with the RAM installed, everything hooked up, just those last 4 wires: power switch, power LED, reset switch, and hard drive LED. So once again, I'll run those down here through this bottom hole, again, to keep the cabling as hidden as possible. This front fan, I only hook up if I've got a discrete graphics card. Otherwise, it's just adding more noise and dust into the system that doesn't benefit us. So I kind of keep it there as a spare. Now this part will often require a bit of a flashlight, maybe even some magnifying glasses, depending on how good your vision is. But you're going to take the hard drive LED cable. I always start with that one first, and it's going to go on the first 2 pins on the bottom row, laying flat, not sitting up, but laying flat. Positive cable is going to go towards the edge of the connector. Right above that is the power LED. This is pretty much every motherboard ever. There's a few exceptions, but mostly they all follow the same form factor and the same wiring layout. Some pre-builts do it their own way. The power LED cable goes directly above that hard drive LED cable. The positive cable, again, closest to the edge, only now we're using the top row of pins instead of the bottom row. We use the bottom row for the hard drive LED, the top row for the power LED. And it's really hard for me to see that. It's very dark in there, which is why I gave you those close-up shots earlier. And I just want to make sure I'm on the right set of pins. If you get these wrong, there will be no harm, okay? If you plug the LED in backwards, it won't light up. If you plug it into the wrong spot on the board, it won't light up. You're not going to hurt anything. But ideally, you do it right the first time. The reset switch is the next one I've grabbed. It goes right beside the hard drive LED on the bottom row of pins, the next 2 that are available. And the final connector is the power switch, which is around here somewhere. There it is. And that goes above the reset switch, right beside the power LED. So all 4 connectors go right up against each other, side by side and above each other. That's all there is. We can give you a close-up of that here real quick. And you'll see we only use this side of the connector. Two connectors on the top, 2 connectors on the bottom. The connectors go horizontal. They do not go this way. They go flat. Power LED, power switch, hard drive LED, reset switch. That's all there is. Super easy. Now we're ready to power the system on and see if everything we did works. Did we get any DOA parts? Did we install anything incorrectly? There's only one way to know. We gotta turn it on. So to do that, I need to give it power. I need to give it a monitor. I need to give it a keyboard and mouse. So I've got a spare little keyboard and mouse right here that I'll utilize for this. I've got the little dongle for the keyboard and mouse right here. And we'll turn the power on. And we'll plug this into any USB ports back in the back. I need to use your monitor at home. So how many people do we have watching? How many monitors am I going to borrow? Let's see what it says. 1,394 monitors I'm about to hook up to. Let's try it out, see what happens. So this is the cable that goes to the back of your screen at home. And I'm going to plug it right here into the back of the motherboard for my very first power on. Make sure the switch on the power supply is set to the off position before we plug power in. Always, always safety first, no matter how dangerous you believe it to be. There's no reason to not be safe. Plug the power in right there. And let's run it behind so it's not so ugly. Come around here. Plug it in there. Okay, this is it, folks. This is our truth-telling moment to see if everything we did correctly, or if we have any bad parts. So to utilize both this camera and your monitor at home, I'm going to put myself in a corner. Let's just put me up there. And you'll see it says no signal. That means that there's no signal coming out of this because it's off. I'm going to flip the switch on the back of the power supply to on, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fans are spinning, lights are coming on, and on our very first boot, you want to just give it a 60 to 90 seconds as it determines what CPU you've put in, what RAM you've put in. Some motherboards may cycle on and off 2, 3, or 4 times. Be patient, keep your hands off of it as long as it's doing something. Now, if 2 minutes goes by and nothing happens, you've got something to be worried about. You've seen the monitor blanked out. It's blanked out again, as I was just saying it blanked out. That's the system restarting itself and configuring itself based on the CPU and the RAM you've selected. This is normal behavior. Continue to keep your hands off. Now, eventually, it will power on and stay on. We just have to be patient here for a moment. And it'll get you nervous, you know, you're like, is this thing coming back on? It's done that now a third time. Keep watching. And eventually it's gonna, it's getting there. It's gonna go into the BIOS. I think F14 is the latest BIOS on this board, so we can just check to see which version of BIOS we've got. It's under System. It's F14. We've got the latest BIOS. Now we can install Windows 10. I've got a Windows 10 bootable media flash drive here, and I've got a video that shows you how you can make one of these legal and free. If you want to activate Windows, that costs money, but to just download and make a Windows bootable media is completely free, and it is completely 100% legal. Microsoft encourages you to do it. And I'm going to plug this into any blue USB port back here. I want the blue ones because they're a bit faster, and that's a fast flash drive. I'm going to hit the reset button on the front of the case. This will test the reset button. Well, at the same time, I have to reset the system to get it to boot from the USB drive. So I hit reset. It's resetting. The drive we installed has not been partitioned or formatted, so the only thing this motherboard can boot from is that flash drive. Remember, even though I installed the DVD drive, I've never wired it up because I don't want to yet. I don't need it at this point to test my work. So going through my Windows 10 install, I'll just click Next and Install Now. And you're going to find, you'll see firsthand just how fast Windows is going to install on a modern computer. Right here, I'm going to say I do not have a product key. And it's going to ask me what version of Windows I want to install, which is normally determined by your product key. Well, I only install Windows 10 Pro for my customers. Unless they have a special requirement, it's always going to be Windows 10 Pro. And next. Then I accept the license agreement. And ideally, it's going to, we always do a custom install, always choose custom on a new install. There's our 2 terabyte 8 data NVMe drive right there. All I have to do is hit Next. And it's Windows is going to take care of partitioning, formatting, and installing now on that new drive. We just need to sit back a moment and wait. And while we're doing that, I can get something to drink because I am parched. Parched, I said. I think it's Gatorade time is what I think. Had enough Coca-Cola today. This is a good time to clean up your mess, throw away any boxes or put them in the recycle bin. I'll take the screwdriver, put it in the box. The customer can have that. That came with the cooler. All the documentation that I set aside, including this plastic panel that I took out from the case, customer gets all that. You'd be surprised. Sometimes customers decide, you know, hey, the DVD drive dies 4 years from now. They don't want to replace it. But if you remove it, they're left with a big gap, like a missing tooth. It looks terrible. So even though they don't want this today, they might want it in a couple years. I give it to them. It's up to them to put it away where they can find it years from now, should they need it. A couple extra zip ties there. Put away my screwdriver. And that's the build, folks. That's it. You've seen it from empty boxes to assembly to fire up to the installation of Windows 10. That's a complete build with a lot of talking. Without all the talking, it can happen in about one third the amount of time, but you really should enjoy your build. Take your time. It's not a race. I'm not looking to impress anybody. I'm just sharing my knowledge with people. And it's important to me that it gets done right. It's important to me that I have a good time doing it. It's not important to me that I do it quickly or that am trying to impress upon people my talent by working quickly. It is, it's not a race. And I don't know that it is beneficial in other areas of life to do something quickly. Enjoy it, savor it, find some tantric enjoyment from the process. Because when you've done this and it starts up like this, there's an adrenaline, there's a chemical release that's beyond words, and it's especially powerful the first time, but it's always there every time afterwards. It's just not quite as powerful. That's a wonderful feeling. Not to mention, you're going to have one hell of a computer. This thing is dead quiet. I cannot hear it running behind me at all. Silence. And this is going to run for years and years and years trouble free. And anytime anybody needs to or wants to work on this to upgrade it, or in the rare case it may need a repair, it's so roomy and easy to work on. There's no proprietary parts. The customer does not have to come back to me. The customer can do it themselves. They can hire anybody who has claims to be a technician and really is, can easily get in there and work on this, whether it's now or in the future, which you can't say about the pre-builts. A lot of the pre-builts use proprietary components that require you to go back to the manufacturer for, and of course they can charge you any price they want because they're the only one who makes the part. We've already completed our first restart with the Windows 10 install. It wants to know our region, so we'll just complete the install by selecting the default here, the United States. Our keyboard is the US keyboard. We're not setting up any secondary keyboard layout. We are not going to hook up to the internet during the installation of Windows 10, or it will require us to create a Microsoft account. I always install without a product key, and I always install without internet access. So I can click down here. There's an option that will not appear if you have internet access right now, which is I don't have internet. We'll click on that, and basically you have to tell it twice. Microsoft calls it a limited setup to have what I call a local account, not a Microsoft account. Now, my customer who receives the system can always create a Microsoft account at any point in time. Now, this system is intended to go to a gentleman named Thomas. So I'll put Thomas's name in here. And then I leave the password blank. Again, the customer can set that. For Cortana, I'll say no. You have to tell it twice. And then I turn all these options off except for location settings. That way it can auto set the time zone for where the computer is being shipped. So I'll leave that one turned on. Then I hit accept and let Windows finalize its installation. After that, we can plug into the internet. We can download all the Windows updates. We can install our product key and activate Windows. We can run Windows, the Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer on it. Generally, I'll put a paid version of Malwarebytes on there for 1 year for my clients to protect them, combined with the built-in Windows antivirus. Those two work together without any need for any other firewall or security software in my experience. And there's a little tune-up, a little optimization I do beyond that with regards to making sure the storage settings is turned on to clear out files once a month, to clear out temp files and free up space. If there's an SSD toolbox for the solid-state drive for the manufacturer, like Intel has one, Samsung Magician, I'll put that on there. Make sure the hibernation file is disabled. Hibernation is really for laptops, things running off batteries. It's going to consume precious solid-state drive space based on how much RAM you've got. 32 gigs of RAM requires a 32 gig hibernation file, even if you never use it. So I turn hibernation off, since a desktop really doesn't benefit from hibernation. A laptop, on the other hand, different story. There's our Windows 10 install, absolutely complete. Once again, there's some optimizations. I'll change the default homepage on the Edge browser to be Google. I'll change the default search engine to be Google. These are just preferences. I will ensure the latest Intel drivers are installed using the Intel Driver Assistant tool that'll go beyond what Windows Update provides. And I won't use anything from the motherboard manufacturer, although you can. I find that just getting the drivers through Windows Update is often good enough. And then using the Intel Driver Assistant, it will scan for example, we're using an Intel graphics driver, we're using an Intel network card driver, Intel chipset. That's the free download for the Intel Driver Assistant will check all of that for us automatically. And then I'll run the heat test on it. There's no graphics benchmarks to run because we're just running Office tools on this. Using it for browsing the web, email, even some basic gaming, be fine with it, but really not designed for gaming unless you want to add a graphics card. But you won't have to change anything else in the system. This power supply is enough to power most graphics cards out there and still have plenty of room left over, despite what you may have heard elsewhere. And if it makes you feel better to buy a more powerful power supply, it's super easy to switch this one out for one that's modular or one that's more powerful or different levels of 80 plus. That's the beauty of a modular self-built machine, is that you can customize it to what's important to you. That's all there is to it, folks. Without installing any drivers on it, I'm just kind of curious, just raw out of the box. If I hit the power button, that will cycle the power off. It's already off. I'm going to pull my USB Windows 10 installation media out. I'm done with that. If you guys want to see how fast this boots up, just raw, without any updates and without any drivers, watch this. 3, 2, 1. And let's see how long it takes to get to the desktop. Remember, I haven't adjusted the BIOS at all. I haven't made any modifications or changes. I haven't turned XMP on. We're already there. So by putting the drivers in and tuning it up, it's only going to go a little bit faster. You'll see it's a point of diminishing returns. Once you're booting up in 10 seconds, saving 2 more seconds on the boot up is not a big deal. Oh, it boots up in 8 seconds now. Oh, it's a whole 2 seconds faster. So these little tweaks I do, they don't amount to much, but I feel good knowing the system is running as optimally as possible. I also like seeing how fast it shuts down. When I reach over and hit this power button, it's the same as clicking start, going to shut down and shut off. It's the same thing. When I hit the power button, it actually does all that. You'll see it does say shutting down. It said it so fast, and already the fans are slowing, stopped. And that's it. That is a fast computer for under $1,000, dead silent, very reliable, super easy to build, 2 terabytes of fast storage. What more do you want? That's it. You can do it. And let me go full screen again here on my camera so I can have a proper goodbye. There we go. All right, guys, let me make sure I give everybody a shout out who has contributed during today's live broadcast. I missed a couple here. Madi Yoel's contributed $5 3 times in a row that I've missed. Thank you so much for all your support, Madi. Michael Dane, another generous contribution of $20. He says, I am the Gordon Ramsay of computers. You donkey! Sorry. Gordon Ramsay and me came out. W. Trexel contributed $2. He says, it's nice to see Jimmy and Lyle, and I'm hoping to be a mod soon. Kevin Arsenault contributed 20 Canadian dollars. He says, thanks for what you do. Right on, Kevin. Thank you for supporting the channel. And again, thanks to Don Dixon. Blue Johnny 79 contributed £5. He says, I'm enjoying the stream as always, Carey, and keep up the good work. Have a Coke on me. Cheers. Cheers, Blue Johnny. I appreciate that very much. Paul Ware and Carnizel and Yum Maker, as well as John Yasuda, Dom Parada. Dom contributed $4.99. He says, thanks for the close-up motherboard tour. Right on, Dom. I'm glad you appreciated that. Wanted to do something a little different today. $10 from Michael Dane again. He says, here's for your supply of Coke for Carey and cookies for your furry kids. Thank you as well to Bebo, David Kelly Parent, Andrew Dorset, and Glenn Davies. Thank you to Zerloff and Mira Ora. David Kelly Parent again with another contribution. Madi again with another contribution. Nicholas Hegblini, more from Madi Yoel today. Thank you so much, Madi. Daniel Schroeder Ian, 1989, Michael Power, and Connor Hodge, as well as Daniel Schroeder, John Olson, Bill Regan. Bill contributed a $50 contribution during today's live broadcast. Very generous. Thank you, Bill. Rick Lakes, Andrew Epperson, Hugh Wong, Scott McFarland. A shout out, of course, Samuel Ramos contributed that Amazon gift card earlier for $100. Thank you, Samuel. Thomas Robinson and John Craig. Andrew Dorset, Mario again, Michael Martin, Michael Dane with a $50 contribution earlier about a couple hours ago. Thank you, Michael, so much for all of your contributions today. And a thank you as well to the first contribution to kick things off was Orlando Breve, setting the pace for helping keep me limited. I can't say sponsor free anymore, but limited sponsorship. We're gonna, if you're not using RoboForm now, stick with us. We're going to explain more about RoboForm. We're going to demonstrate how it works and why I've been using it for so many years. Over a decade, I've been using this product, and I'm very honored that they have agreed to run through this little experiment with me to help sponsor the show, which enables me to bring you more content more often. And I'm just super excited to have them on board officially. And I hope it'll be a beginning of a lifelong relationship. As well as you guys too. Many of you watching the channel for the first time. I hope you'll continue to see not only new content I'm releasing, I've got lots of content coming out, but also the content you completely missed. I've been releasing over the last 12 years. I've been around here 12 years, folks. So very happy to see the community grow. You know, we exceeded the 300,000 subscriber mark. I'm looking forward to 600,000 soon. So please support the show by sharing links to videos on your social media sites. The Amazon links that point to everything you see in my videos, the screwdriver, the Lazy Susan, all the parts in today's build, they point to Amazon. I make a small commission when you use those Amazon links, even if you don't buy the thing the link takes you to. The link takes you to Amazon, and then while you're in Amazon, you search for something and buy that. I make a commission from it. It's another way to show support. It doesn't cost you anything more, and I appreciate that you guys are thoughtful in doing that. Also, you can contribute, whether it's through Super Chat or using the donate button at tech-vets.com. There's also a link in the video notes there as well. Are all ways of showing support, as well as just being friendly and kind to one another in the chat room as we build this community. Support is not just financial. Support is also just being a kind person. And it's amazing how some people just don't have it in them to be nice. And for those people, we ban them as soon as we recognize they show their true selves. They're banned from the community. And it's important to me that the community structure here is that we're all on the same page. Nobody's trying to destroy this community, or they're kicked out. And at the same time, people who want to be a part of this community are welcome in. Nobody is shunned except for being a jerk. That's it. It's a pretty easy bar, but you'd be surprised how many people just don't have it in them. So I really appreciate each and every one of you, because the internet is filled with a bunch of jerks. And at least here, I know in this community, there are no jerks here. And thank you guys so much for the people in blue for helping keep it that way, so I can focus on making the video and you guys can help with keeping things civil in the chat room and enforcing and leading by example good behavior. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks so much for joining. I will be back tomorrow. I think I'm going to have Steve Bass on tomorrow. We're going to talk a bit about smart plugs and smart lights and stuff like that. It's very, very useful to have access to turn the lights on and off, or check the status of your garage door. Did I remember to close it? Even adjusting the brightness of the bulbs and things you can all do through the phone you carry with you all the time. At some point, you got to leave the house. And there's a nice peace of mind knowing that you can check in on the house, whether it's with webcams, turning lights on and off, porch light, again, checking garage door opener status, all of this stuff. So we're going to talk in detail with Steve Bass about that tomorrow about 3 o'clock Pacific time. And Philip Perez just contributed $2. Ian contributed $5. Shrine Idol contributed £2 and says Dosh time. And Matt Power contributed $2. Thanks again to all of you for helping support this content. And I will see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.